There's no time.
The time is
13
o'clock.
Hey everybody, what's going on? Oh my goodness.
It is the main show.
It's Wednesday already.
Yes, it is.
And holy crap.
I know.
I hate to tell you this, Zach, but I was going to talk about Heaven's Gate, but that's not one of the ones I'm going to talk about. Well, the thing about it, there's so many. It was like really hard for me to narrow it down. I mean, when I was like doing the research for it, I was like, holy crap, there are so many that had like terrible things happen. Like our friend Dave, who's here. Hi, Dave, by the way. Mentioned Twilight Zone, the movie, where Vic Morrow got killed and those two kids got killed like in with the helicopter crash and everything like that. But the thing about it is like I wanted to cover movies that I don't know. I don't know if this is going to be like I was trying to think of some parameters. I was like, I want to cover movies where like a bunch of stuff went wrong. And also movies that we hadn't really talked about before. Because the thing about it is, like, one of the most famous, like, troubled productions behind the scenes was Apocalypse Now, obviously. But we just reviewed Apocalypse Now, like, not too long ago. And I think we went into, like, a lot of that stuff. So I didn't really want to, like, repeat a lot of information. I wanted to kind of focus mostly on movies that we hadn't really talked about. And stuff. And I was thinking about doing Heaven's Gate. That was one of the ones that was in consideration. But then I was like, some of the other ones I feel like had more shit go wrong and like more really bad shit go wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there was just so many. I was thinking about doing Ishtar too, because but that's the thing. Because they kind of,
when I was a kid,
they kind of like shot that in the middle of like a really bad like war. It was like the PLO and like something or something like that, and like they like Dustin Hoffman was like somebody said he was gonna get kidnapped and like all this other kind of shit. And then I was thinking, well, maybe I should just do movies that were shit shows behind the scenes, but turned out great movies. I said that would kind of narrow it down. But then there was like some stuff that I kind of wanted to talk about that were maybe not so great movies, like, you know what I mean? Like the 1996 Island of Dr. Moreau, which I don't think is a great movie, but that was like very famously.
I liked it though.
Such a shit show behind the scenes that they made a whole documentary about it.
I still liked it. And then that same director came back to do Color Out of Space.
Yeah. That poor guy, Richard Stanley. Yeah. His experience on that movie, which we'll get into because that's one of the main ones I wanted to talk about, but his experience during that movie, like, I think he had a nervous breakdown and like he was like, fuck this shit, and like went out in the fucking desert and lived out there for like a long time and shit like that. I mean, so it was, like I said, it was hard to narrow it down. So hopefully, and I think I have more material than I probably need. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I have a couple at the beginning that are kind of just like short little bite-sized ones, but then there's three really big movies that I want to get into talking about. And then I have a couple more like that if we get to, then we get to them. And if we don't, we don't. Because the two at the end, like we've already talked about a little bit, like in other formats. So, so there's that. And then Zach said you can do the 60s Cleopatra. I thought about doing that one too, but I don't know. That's the thing. I feel like I wanted ones, like I said, that almost seemed like they were kind of cursed, where they had like all kind of like horrible injuries and all kind of just terrible, crazy shit happening. I feel like, yes, bad shit happened in the back of Cleopatra, but I feel like that was mostly due to it being like really, really over budget and like really, you know what I mean? Because wasn't it a thing where Elizabeth Taylor, like she asked for so much money that it was already like over budget before they even fucking started?
I don't know.
Or something like that. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Like I said, it was hard for me to narrow it down. So if I don't get to the one, I mean, this is a topic that we will probably have to revisit at some point. Pat Hatfield is talking about The Conqueror. That's one that I actually did want to get into a little bit because, that was fucking horrifying. So, But we might do Heaven's Gate, Heaven's Gate, like, Heaven's Gate, like, on the next one, because
that was... the cult Heaven's Gate, right?
No, the movie.
Oh, the movie.
The
okay.
movie.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah. It was, it's a very, very famous, kind of Hollywood shit show, that movie was. So that might be on a second one, you know what I mean? Richard Brown said, wasn't Cecil B. DeMille notorious for killing people during his shoots? Yeah, you would be shocked at how many people like died on movie sets back then. Because the thing about it is that, particularly the actors, I feel like the crew members, like, you know, people that did lighting and stuff like that, they were actually kind of like unionized and they had protections before actors did. So for a long time, like, actors just got completely shit on. And they would just make them do all kind of shit, and they didn't really have any recourse. You know what I mean? So, we'll talk about that a little bit when we talk about The Wizard of Oz, because...
Well, during the time of the silver screen, they were just dime a dozen actors.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They were disposable.
That's what I'm saying. So it's like they didn't really care all that much. Like, if something bad happened to you, and they were just like, oh, well... you know, you gotta work like fucking 24 hours a day.
Most of them kind of came from the dregs of society. Most actors, you know, they didn't come from money. They had no pull, and they basically had to beg their way into a job at the studio, and then they just treated it like dirt for a long time. Then they eventually got unionized. That's really... And some of them, even if they became stars, they treated them pretty badly.
They did, yeah.
Yeah.
They did.
Pretty bad.
Well, when we did the show about Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff, Boris Karloff was actually one of the first people that started the whole... He wasn't the only one, but him and some other actors got together, and they were the ones that started, like, the Screen Actors Guild and all that kind of stuff. So, because he was tired of... Well, he got injured, too, like, in doing Frankenstein. Like, I think it fucked up his back, like, forever. Because they didn't really... You know, and like I said, back then, you know, and we'll talk about this when we talk about Wizard of Oz too, but it's just like, you know, the makeup they had, the costuming and shit like that, they didn't really care. Like, if the actors were uncomfortable or if the makeup was toxic or anything like that. So, you know, if something like that happened and you cried about it, they were just like, oh, well, you know, nothing to do. Danny Rowling said, a horror adult version of Wizard of Oz would be sick, especially the Tin Man axing up a bunch of wolves like in the story. I'm surprised nobody's made that. Somebody must have made that. I mean, it's just ripe for... I know they've done, you know... Well, didn't they do Wicked? Isn't that about the Wicked Witch of the West? I don't think that's not horror though. It's like a musical.
Return to Oz had a lot of...
Yeah, I gotta do that on my Scare Salon channel. What if you saw it today? I posted a video about Mad Monster Party. Yeah. Speaking of Boris Karloff, but Return to Oz is definitely one that I want to do. Maybe I'll do it next week or the
with
week
the
after.
itty bitty Feruza, starring an itty bitty Feruza Bulk.
Yeah,
cute little Feruza Bulk. She's probably about 12, maybe.
Something like that, 12, maybe.
Yeah.
I remember that being... I haven't seen it in a long time, but I remember it being, like, pretty scary.
I remember liking it.
I liked it, too, but it was, like, it was scary. Like, a lot of people said when they saw that as kids, it was, like, really traumatic. You know what I mean? But, yeah. So, yeah, Pat Hatfield talking about League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, causing Sean Connery to retire. Yeah. Pat says there's a horrific kind of sequel to The Wizard of Oz coming out. I think it's called Don't Go Back to Oz. There's a trailer on YouTube. Well, I don't know. I mean, like I said, there's so many other books in the series too that you could like totally do something with that, but I don't know. Other than I think Wizard of Oz and Return to Oz are the only Oz related things that I've seen. Zach says No Time to Die was kind of a disaster. Yeah, I remember that. Well, see, that's the thing. It's like you never know,
Which
though.
one?
No Time to Die.
007?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if there's more than one.
No.
Okay.
That's the thing. I kind of wanted to... Because there are two different things. There's kind of like movies that were shit shows behind the scene and then they ended up, you know, like Ishtar or something like that came out and everybody just like crapped on it because it was terrible. But then there's movies that very famously were just like a fucking nightmare to film, but then they came out and they were fantastic. So you never really know how it's going to end up.
I remember seeing Ishtar as a kid because they kept playing it on cable over and over again, probably trying to make their money back somehow. And I remember being entertained, but I was a kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
I don't actually remember if I've ever seen it. Or yeah. I think I've seen like parts of it, but I don't think I've ever like sat there and watched the whole thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm curious enough to sit there and watch the whole thing though. I mean, I kind of am, but
I just remember they're out in the desert, a bunch of horses.
Yeah.
Wasn't there an English girl hanging out with a bunch of like Arabian guys or something? And it was like some kind of romance, and then there was there was some kind of war going on. You know, yeah. I just remember it was just kind of entertaining to watch, but I don't really remember much about it.
I don't either.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I remember I saw a couple scenes from it, and I was just kind of like, eh. Like, it didn't seem like all that funny, or it seemed like a little try-hard. So
I kind of remember it being a little bit like Romancing the Stone or something. It was trying to be something like that.
Yeah. Well, that was kind of like well, didn't Ishtar come out in like that was 87? Something?
No, early
or was
80s.
it?
I think it might have been more like 83 or 84 maybe.
I thought it was like
83,
later 80s, like
maybe.
87.
Maybe I got it. Maybe I have it confused with something else.
But I could be wrong too. I don't really remember. But yeah, that was. I mean, the 80s were very big on kind of these, like, you know, exotic adventure kind of movies because of Indiana Jones and all that. And then like you had the kid version, which was like the Goonies and shit like that. Danny Rolling's talking about Crawl Space. Almost got Klaus Kinski whacked by the director. Yeah, we reviewed Crawl Space not too long ago. However, we are going to be talking about Klaus Kinski and Werner Herzog because we're going to be talking about Fitzcarraldo.
Two totally unacceptable dudes. Totally unacceptable. Those guys.
Well, and like I said, Fitzcarraldo is one of those movies that is famously, probably one of the most famous like shit shows. There's also a documentary about the making of that because it was, again, like a total disaster. But that movie actually came out like pretty great. But that shit was crazy, and it wasn't all Klaus Kinski's fault. A lot of it was, to be fair, but some stuff just like crazy shit happened, like horrible injuries and all this other kind of stuff. John Smith said, anyone brought up The Abyss yet? That was another one that I was thinking about mentioning. Anytime that you're gonna film underwater, you know, because I think I have a little bit about Titanic and stuff like that, and The Abyss, you're gonna have a bad time because I think on The Abyss there were a couple, and maybe on Titanic as well, there were like you know, people got underwater, like, you know, the bends and shit like that. And I think there was also shit, what else was I gonna say? Oh, and I was gonna say too that, remember when we were talking about Jaws, you know, Steven Spielberg, who was very young at the time, he's like, hey, we're gonna film this on the real ocean because, you know, realism. And then he was like, oh, maybe that was a stupid idea. but they did ask him like later on. He said, well, I would still do it. Because normally when they shoot, like, you know, a movie and you're supposed to be out on the ocean, they would just film it like in a big water tank or something like that. They don't usually shoot on the real ocean for obvious reasons. But I guess he kind of wanted it to look like the real ocean. So yeah, so it, in a way, and you know, and we talked about Jaws too, like where the shark didn't work and all that other kind of stuff. But a lot of the stuff that was kind of, you know, shitty and like made the set really hard, like actually ended up working to the movie's benefit. That doesn't always happen. Yeah. But sometimes when you get lucky. And I think too, like the guy that played Quint, Robert Shaw, I think he was like drunk all the time and he was like hard to deal with. So there was that as well. I mean,
that's good though.
But well, yeah, that's what I mean.
That was the best. That character was the best.
He was the best part of the movie. I know. See, sometimes.
Well, Dreyfus.
That doesn't.
Yeah.
Sometimes that doesn't translate well to screen. Sometimes conflict on set is good, like you end up with a good movie, but sometimes like not so much. I
always liked Dreyfus though. There was something about Richard Dreyfuss. He was just kind of like the short guy everyman kind of, but he wasn't a beta though. You know what I'm talking about? He would man up. I liked it. I liked that character. That you know, well, I say him character. He played those characters a lot. Yeah. You know? Like that
was his niche.
That was his thing, right? He was kind of the everyman, kind of underdog, but he fucking rose to the occasion. That was his job. I mean, he went out to go fucking see the aliens, and then he went out to go see the fucking shark. He went out, you know, he did all that shit. That's what Dreyfus did.
He was right for adventure.
Yeah.
He would just go out and like deal with all that shit.
Yeah, he left with the aliens. He lost his wife, said fuck it. Remember that? I'm going with the aliens.
It's like you and your
goes up in the UFO.
You and your mashed potato mountains.
Yeah. Making a mountain in his living room. That's a fucking excellent movie.
I know.
Yeah.
We did a review of that a while back too. Yeah, Mango's saying like James Cameron almost killed them all. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, directors will go a long way for verisimilitude, I guess. They're like, you know. Nowadays, like I said, they have protections, but
that era's over.
Yeah.
That whole thing.
That's true. Although, I mean, shit still happens nowadays because when I was looking for ones, because I was kind of more interested in more like kind of classic movies and stuff, but there's still like bad shit happens on sets nowadays, obviously, because
They got all that shit down to a science, and they're using all this fucking technology and, you know, sets that are 3D, but it's all fucking HD screens, so you can make anybody look like they're anywhere now. That's how they're doing all the Star Wars shit. So it's just not, it's not what it was, and it's kind of stale. The writing's bad. Evidently, they're fucking. They took a huge hit, like $140 billion last year. Is fucking what Hollywood is. What the Hollywood studios altogether lost in the market share. They just suck. They're gonna have to fucking revitalize it, and it revitalized itself several times. You know, Spielberg and Lucas and all those guys. They didn't come from the studios. They were indie filmmakers that got picked up by studios. And they really helped rebuild Hollywood from in the early 80s, late 70s. If it wasn't for them, it would have just been fucking stale-ass westerns and cop flicks forever, because that's what Hollywood did. But it's come back around again. There's just not much art there anymore, you know. I think it'll fix itself. There's good indie stuff going on out there. If it had studio backing, you could probably make some interesting movies again.
Well, and the thing about it is that I think there's lots of interesting movies out there. It's just that, just like almost always, they're usually indie movies or they're smaller movies.
And, you know,
there's all kind of good shit out there.
Even Disney, nightmare. Disney is a nightmare of a fucking company, all right? It had a winner on its hands, Mandalorian, and then they stepped on their own dick. And then they fucked up a bunch of other shit because they don't know how they don't know how to fucking make art, you know. John Favreau did. They should have put him in charge of all that shit. It'd have been like the MCU. He better, but you just can't have too many fucking cooks in the kitchen. It's just, you know, you have to have fucking senior management be able to fire people.
Yeah, John Smith's talking about the documentary about the 90s Island of Dr. Moreau. Yeah, that was on, I don't know if it's on Shudder anymore, but it was on Shudder for a while.
I don't give a fuck what anybody says. I like that movie.
Yeah, well, they're not talking about like what the quality of the movie is. They're just talking about all the crazy shit that went on behind the scenes.
But it flopped.
It did.
It flopped.
Well, I remember seeing it. I don't even remember like thinking one way or the other about it. But now that I'm like looking at stills from it and everything like that, it looks ridiculous. So now I kind of have to like rewatch it because I want to see what it was.
By the standards of its day, it was just kind of mediocre. It was just something kind of in the middle. Standards were higher back then. But today, if that come out today, I think people probably would have enjoyed it. You know, maybe.
I don't know. I haven't seen it, so I can't really judge.
It was okay. Dude was making these damn animal human hybrids out on an island.
Yeah, I mean that's not the first time that's been adapted. That's an H.G. Wells story. They made it back in the I think Bert I. Gordon produced one back in the fucking 70s. And I was like, because I remember over on my Scare Salon channel, I did like a double, like a creature feature, Bert I. Gordon creature feature with like Empire of the Ants and Food of the Gods. And then the third one that they did was Island of Dr. Moreau. And I was like, oh, I should have done a triple feature, but I didn't get around to it.
Marlon Brando was in it, being crazy as shit. He was just being crazy as shit through the whole thing, which is great.
Like I said, the stills from that are hilarious.
Yeah, he had his face was all painted white.
He had that funny like sun hat on.
Yeah, sun hat had an umbrella on the top of it, I think. Didn't have an umbrella on the top of it?
Or something.
He was just a wacko, and he was afraid of
a
ultraviolet radiation.
Little bit.
Afraid of ultraviolet radiation.
I mean, okay.
But Marlon Brando was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of actors are crazy. Yeah. You kind of have to be a little bit crazy. I mean, actually, I'm more surprised that most of them are relatively normal. Yeah. Because I would think, I mean, if it was my job to like have to go in to like play other people all the time, I think that would probably drive me crazy after a while. So
you'd be talking to Marlon Brando and fucking the longer you talk to him, the higher the chances were he was going to try to kiss you. That's what he was known for.
As long as he doesn't like try to stick a butter up my butt, then what I mean. Then...
No. He was just trying.
You didn't see that movie, did you?
He just trying to fuck, and he'd kiss men, you know.
Well, that's okay.
Yeah, he's just a weird dude, man.
Richard Brown said the Salon episodes are fantastic, Jenny. Thank you very much. Yeah, I am having a good time with those. I'm doing like some retro shit, you know what I mean? I think this weekend sometime I'll put up the next 6 episodes of Thriller, the Boris Karloff show, if I have time to watch them. But so we're doing a Boris Karloff week because I did Bad Monster Party today because he was in that too. And yeah, they're talking about The Crow, which, like I said, yeah, that was kind of like a big one too. But we already reviewed that. And honestly, I don't think. I mean, obviously that's like terrible that Brandon Lee got killed and everything like that. But I don't think, other than that, I don't think that it was like any worse than normal. Like, I think that was the only thing that happened on that. Gramthars says, excellent documentary about the making of Apocalypse Now called Hearts of Darkness, about how Martin Sheen and Francis Ford Coppola went nuts during filming. Brando helped them get to that point. Yeah, when we were talking about Apocalypse Now, because I think Martin Sheen had a heart attack on the set of that too, didn't he? Like when he was young. Like, yeah, it was supposedly like really, really terrible. Let's see. John Smith said, Fairuza Balk, wait a minute, I lost it. Oh, acquired that thing that's death for a Hollywood actress being called difficult. She just didn't want to be involved in that madness anymore.
Sometimes that's a euphemism for not wanting to put out, too.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. What does difficult mean?
What does difficult
it's
mean?
It's like, well, she doesn't want to do...
She was too difficult. She wouldn't give...
She wouldn't do what I said.
Yeah, she wouldn't give me the ass. Yeah.
Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, Danny Rowling said The Island of Dr. Moreau is my favorite Kilmer film alongside Wonderland. Now, see, I'm gonna have to like rewatch it.
I liked it.
I haven't seen it in a long time.
Kind of reminded me of The Howling in a certain way. It had a lot of like half human, type people. I liked it. I thought it was good. You know how in the Howling they had the damn werewolf colony out in the woods, and there was a anthropologist that was or a sociologist that was studying them, and kind of like a scientist was in charge of them, watching it all happen. That kind of reminded me of The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Yeah.
Yeah, where you have this doctor, but he's not. He's making them. He's making these animal-human hybrids, and Fairuza was one of them. She was like his daughter. She looked human, but she was turning it into a cat. Slowly turning it into a cat. She was part cat.
Wish I had.
He was doing it. He was trying to come up for like cures for diseases because animals didn't get certain diseases. And he was just blending people and animal together to make them more resistant to disease.
Or just because it would be cool. I wouldn't mind having.
Well, he was crazy.
Some fins or wings or something like that.
Well,
that'd be badass.
He's an obvious madman.
Well, yeah, somebody pointed out, too, that I think the first film version of Island of Dr. Moreau had Charles Laughton in it, who was also in The Old Dark House, which we just talked about yesterday. So, there was
all right. That. So, in the show, sorry to piss y'all off, we're going to run some commercials. It's the holidays, and we're in a fucking nut roll because, all these fucking expenses hitting us at once. And over the years, Jenny and I have noticed that we've lost so many subscribers. We went down from getting...
Well, patrons, not
patrons,
so much subscribers.
Yeah,
subscribers still going up,
yes,
actually.
Subscribers go up. Patrons going down. We used to get $600 a month from patronage. Now it's only $300. And it was like that for about a year and a half. But it really didn't matter up until recently. Now that's enough to make a difference. So we got to actually start working. Didn't that fucking suck? We got to start working.
I've been working the whole time.
We got to start working. We got to start advertising and plugging. Got to start advertising and plugging Jenny's books, her other channels. Got to start asking for patrons. So we're going to start handing out the collection plate. And we're going to have... Jenny's got some new commercials type shit that she's going to make. And after the new year, the show's going to be updated with intros and outros and stuff. So... Probably new theme song.
Like I said, I might kind of streamline it a little bit too. Like maybe, I mean, I'm still gonna put up a lot of videos, but I might like cut out a couple. Like I might just do like a couple movie reviews a week, and just like maybe one Scare Salon and one Crime in Memorial, because I'm trying to do like too many, and I think I'm getting like behind.
Getting behind on other stuff, and the return on this show actually is kind of takes time compared to the other income streams that we have going, like Jenny's graphic design company and everything. That's actually competing for time with this. So we're leopards, and leopards really don't want to change their spots. We just want to become better leopards, if you know what I'm talking about. So we have to start asking for money, e-begging. Ain't that some shit? Actually, it's not e-begging. It's just advertising. It's been so long since we've advertised and plugged, and that's also affected income streams.
I just keep forgetting because, like I said, since we went to so many live streams. I feel like we just always are having a good time and we're talking to you guys, and I just kind of just forget to do it. You know what I mean? Gramthars said, yeah, quality is always more important than quantity. That's kind of what I was getting into. I was thinking to myself, I like doing all of the, movie reviews and all the stuff that I do every week, but I was getting to a point where I was just like, I feel like I'm rushing through everything, and I feel like I could do them a lot better if I did like a couple fewer, like every week. So I might start doing that like in the new year. You know what I mean? Because I have gotten a little bit behind. Like for example, this week I haven't even put up a book review, if you didn't notice, because I started reading the book, and it's good, but I just haven't had time to finish it and do a review of it. Yeah. So
another thing we're start plugging is that some people are not set up to give super chats, and then some people are listening to the show but not live. They're listening to it recorded. So we're gonna start plugging Jenny's Cash App. That way you can send money directly to Jenny through her Cash App without having to worry about super chats
or PayPal or
any of that other shit. If you guys have Cash App. And we may be able to do what's the other one? The one that's on the bank card?
What, Zelle?
Zelle. Maybe we can do Zelle too. We'll plug both of those.
Yeah, because I have a couple clients that pay me through Zelle.
Right.
Just go right into my bank account.
Go right into her bank account, which...
I mean, anyways.
We'll make some commercials for that. And we'll keep plugging your Cash App and your Zelle.
I have to say, though, that
you could probably put that in the description box, actually.
Yeah.
Your Cash App.
I mean, my PayPal is in there.
Is it?
And
okay.
Our Patreon link is in there. Like, all the stuff is... Most of the stuff is in the... and also, last week, I finally remembered to put the link to my Scare Salon channel and my Crime and Memorial channel. I put that in the description box, because I don't know why I didn't think of that before, but... Dave says Venmo, too. Yeah, there you go. I think... Do I have Venmo? Yeah, probably. I have pretty much like all the apps on my phone because, like I said, I have like different clients and everybody prefers to use a different thing. So I have like all the apps like on my phone because different people want to pay in different ways, and that's fine with me. Whatever.
So you're gonna have to bear with us. We're gonna be doing plugging and advertising, but everybody else does it. And also, channels been monetized. The channels that are monetized. We have a different selection so we can get the commercials that'll be in the middle of the show now, won't they?
Yeah, I just start putting them like mid-rolls because you get like a little bit more for that.
You get a little bit more money, right?
Because before I didn't do it before because like I don't really like watching stuff with mid-rolls in it, but then I was like, well, you do get more money from that,
right?
Rather than just like skipping them at the beginning,
right? And even a small improvement would make a big difference for us.
Yeah,
we're at the point where $200 or $300 a month makes a difference now. So.
But what I was gonna say is that we did get a new patron named Stephanie.
Okay.
So thank you very much, Stephanie. And also, I wanted to thank Dermot, who's been our fan for who's been on here for like a really long time. Yeah. And he actually increased his Patreon support, and he also like sent me extra money on PayPal as well.
Thank you.
So I appreciate that very much. I might have mentioned it before, but I just like to do it on.
There's a super chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gramthars. We all got to make a nickel and a dollar. Yeah, I mean, seriously. Like I said, and I feel bad because it's just kind of like, I like to just chill out and do the show,
but we have all these we have all these different streams. Patronage, we get that once a month, and I think that's timely. Super chats take 60 days for us to get that super chat, I think, isn't it?
Well, it's what they do.
Yeah.
The super chats and the ad revenue from YouTube are all one thing. Okay. It comes over your Google AdSense account.
Okay.
So, but you'll usually get it like the month after.
Right. So,
like on the 21st.
30 to 60 days.
Something like that. Okay. Like, so if somebody sent, like, for example, if somebody sent a super chat in December, then I would get it January 20, January 21st.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but then we have other ways where you can get it. Like I said, with Cash App and Zelle. Once those are set up, you'll be able to get. We'll get that the same day. I mean, it's instant, and YouTube doesn't get anything.
Yeah.
So it's good.
But like I said, that's what it's not
just whatever's most
like
convenient for
YouTube.
you guys.
It goes through Google AdSense is what it does. You have to have a Google AdSense account, and all the super chats and all the revenue that you get from people clicking on your ads, that's all lumped into one thing, and they just send you one big lump sum.
Tammy's asking to plug Tom's OnlyFans.
Yeah.
I haven't started the OnlyFans yet. That's fine.
I know everybody keeps telling us to do that. I don't think you can make any money on that shit anymore, can you?
Probably not.
I mean, unless you have like a really weird niche or something.
Yeah.
Danny says Tom's head could be Jenny's crystal ball for the Oz part of the show. Yeah. Like the Wicked Witch. Hobbies will make them sleep. Man, I haven't seen The Wizard of Oz in a long time. Yeah, it was all kind of fucked up shit going on behind the scenes of that. I was thinking the other day that Wizard of Oz, so I'll kind of mention this in a bit, but like all the actors, the little people that played the Munchkins, they said those motherfuckers were wild. They made a whole movie about it. Did you see it? Carrie Fisher was in it. It was called Under the Rainbow.
Yeah, I heard
Chevy Chase was in it too. They used to play it on cable all the time. I probably saw it like a million times, like back in the old days. And it was about, because they were like the little people wranglers, like for the Wizard of Oz movie. So it was set like back in the 30s. And like all the crazy shit that they got up to. Like, it was a funny movie, but looking at it now, it's like probably wasn't all that funny. Like the shit they were doing. But, we'll get into that in a little bit. So, man, I'm out of ice already. So where are you?
Yeah, I got some more made.
I mean, I don't feel too bad. We've been going almost 40 minutes. Almost 40 minutes. But yeah, so, I don't know. Like I said, I had to, like, real quick, because like I said, I'm kind of behind on stuff. But I did, like, pop a couple. If you've been watching my Scare Salon videos, I have been, like, popping little commercials in those, usually just one like at the end or whatever, like for whatever, like my books or my games or whatever it is. But I got a bunch of those, and I still have a bunch of games I don't have commercials for because I just don't have time to make them. You know what I mean? The pearl is in the river. Oh my god, I had forgotten all about that. Man, now I want to watch that movie again. I haven't seen that movie in such a long time. That was one of those movies that was just on constantly. I think I saw that movie like at least 400 times when I was growing up.
Okay,
like
40 minutes in, right?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead and start that. Hold on.
John Smith said, from what I understand, the Munchkin stories were mainly started by Judy Garland's drunk and drug-addicted rants on chat shows, not really based on truth. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I wonder. Like, it was kind of getting around, but I don't really know. I don't really know, like, how much of it was true or not. I feel so bad for poor Judy Garland. What? Okay. What's the matter? Okay. Pookie just walks in the room and she's like, Rah! I was like, okay. Dave says, I think it's on Prime. See, I remember that movie being really funny, but I haven't seen it in a long time. What is it? It's like, is it late 70s or early 80s? I thought it was 82, but maybe it's older than that. It was, I remember that being on all the time, and I remember that movie Foul Play being on all the time. That also had Chevy Chase in it, and had Goldie Hawn and Burgess Meredith. And I remember liking that one because it was like a murder mystery, but it was also like a comedy. Man, those are like two more movies that I'm going to have to like review at some point. Yeah, Dave said early 80s. That's what I thought. I thought it was like 81 or 82 or something like that. Yeah, John Smith said, sad to say, but Judy is not what you would describe as a reliable eyewitness. Yeah. Like I said, I feel so bad for her. Because, I mean, we'll get into that a little bit, too, when we talk about Wizard of Oz. But, like, that girl, like, didn't really have a chance, to be honest with you. But she started out when she was young, and they're like, hey, take all these drugs. And, you know, we all know how that turned out. She was younger than me when she died. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
47 years old, she died. Slasher Fred said, speaking of the Wizard of Oz, there was a miniseries in the 2000s called Tin Man, which is sort of a modern version of the Wizard of Oz. I had never heard of that, actually. Dave says, and Billy Barty was in Foul Play, too. The Bible salesman. Yeah, I forgot about that. Holy shit. Man, you remember that movie, like, really good. I really, really do have to, like, fucking watch that again. I remember that being really funny. We should do a double feature one time, like, Under the Rainbow and Foul Play. 80s cable classics, because they played that shit all the time. Because we've already talked about the other movie that I saw a million times was Time After Time, which was amazing, and we've already talked about that. But then the other two movies that I used to see all the time on cable back then were Grease 2, which I actually like. Fight me. You know, I know it's not as good as the first Grease.
It's okay.
But it wasn't terrible. I thought it was pretty good. I thought, like, Michelle Pfeiffer was cute in it. And also the pirate movie, which was not good.
I remember that one, yeah.
It was the Pirates of Penzance, but it was, like, a modernized version. Like, Christy McNichol was in it, and, like, the dude from the Blue Lagoon or whatever. What's that dude's name? Christopher Atkins? Yeah. But I remember when I first saw it, I didn't realize that it was, like, another version of the Pirates of Penzance until we saw the Pirates of Penzance, like, in my chorus class. Like, we saw the one with what's his face in it? The guy that was in Fish Called Wanda. What's that dude's name? God damn it. I'll think of it in, like, 5 seconds. Probably. John Smith said, I prefer the songs in Grease too. Yeah, I said it. Okay, so I'm not the only one. I don't know if I prefer the song. I did when I was a kid. But, I mean, the older I've gotten, I think I like the songs from Grease 1 better. But honestly, like, I will defend Grease 2. I think it's a good movie, and I think the songs are good. I mean, I really like, I like that Charade song. I like the one they do at the end with the seasons, like, that goes into, like, the sad song when she thinks the dude's dead and all that kind of stuff. That's, like, a good song. And the Reproduction, that's a funny song. That's a good, I used to have the vinyl. Like, soundtrack. I don't know what happened to it, but I used to have it when I was a kid. Kevin Kline, thank you. That's his name. Kevin Kline. He was in the version of Pirates of Penzance that I saw. Yeah, Dave said, Grease 2, I know the words to every song. I do as well. Yeah, I used to have the record. I don't know where it is now. But
yeah, Grease was a big hit, so they were just like, oh, you want more of that? And they just kind of made another one.
Yeah, they just made another one. And like I said, Michelle Pfeiffer was in it.
Yeah.
And she was good. I liked her. I liked her character. I thought she was cute as shit. Adrian Zemed was in that shit.
It was barely a sequel. It was just another one.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like the next year. Frenchie was in it.
Yeah, she was.
But she was like and some of the teachers were like came back. But I mean, mostly it was like different characters. But that's okay. I mean, because the ones from the first one, they graduated.
Yeah, and the songs were all right. And they went to motorcycles instead of cars.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Yeah, it was like a little biker
classic
game.
as that first one, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, that first one was fucking awesome.
I know.
And, yeah, you know, me and Jenny watched Grease. We even got the live version is good, too.
That was fantastic.
Real
Actually,
good.
I was really surprised at, like, how good that was.
They streamed it live on television, and it, like a play, and it was good. They were running around and going from studio to studio. And live. It was good, real good.
We've watched it a couple times since then.
Yeah,
I admit it.
They had a bunch of like guest rock stars doing songs. Belle Biv DeVoe was on there from back in the '90s. They were on there doing Beauty School Dropout.
#1 in the charts.
Yeah.
Belle Biv DeVoe.
Yeah.
Where are my Kids in the Hall fans at? That's what that was from. Yeah. You never saw Kids in the Hall. They had a whole sketch about Belle Biv DeVoe. And every time I hear that, like, I always think of that fucking Kids in the Hall sketch. Let's see. Zach says, I especially feel bad for directors who make a super acclaimed movie then follow it with a bomb and their career kind of tanks after that. I can't imagine being in that headspace. And honestly, that seems to happen quite a bit, you know? I don't know if it's just because, like, some directors, they make, like, some amazing thing and it's, like, some passion project and they wanted to make it for, like, a really long time. And then they make it and everybody's like, oh, my God, it's the most amazing thing ever. And then, like, for their next follow-up, like, nothing is going to live up to that. So it's just like whatever they make, everyone's just kind of like, we're kind of over you. Bye. You know what I mean? It seems like that seems to happen more than the reverse. Like guys that just like make better and better movies like every single time. You know?
You talking about directors?
Yeah.
Directors have a shelf life.
Well, yeah.
Even good directors are gone after about 4 or 5 movies, 6 movies. They're lucky.
Not always, like I said, but...
Spielberg was he was kind of an exception. He had a bunch of good ones, but even his kind of got a little stale. James Cameron, nah. He went stale pretty quick. They just get played out, you know what I mean? It's like singers, you know. They had Morrissey on there saying, you know, talking about how old he is now and he's still able to sing, and he's like, he felt like he's lucky because there's guys who were famous in when they were 20, but now they just can't write songs like they used to, you know, because the magic's gone. You know, a lot of it has to do with being young and being hungry for it, and
well, you have to have a passion for it. You have to really want to do that.
Yeah, and there's something about being slightly new to everything gives you a certain ability to make mystique happen where there really isn't any to a mature person. You know what I mean? Fucking, but you can re-experience it through storytelling, you know, and a story told by a 25-year-old seems to be more compelling than one that's told by a 55-year-old.
Well, it depends what the story is about. You know what I mean? I'll go that far.
Right.
Well, and I think, too, like you said, I think you kind of, like, sort of alluded to this, but I think it's good to kind of stay on top of... You don't necessarily have to stay on top of new technology, but... I think you should be, like, challenging yourself all the time. You know what I mean? And sometimes that has to do... Because, you know, it's very, very easy for someone who gets older to be like, oh, I don't know about all this newfangled, you know, what's this or whatever, these youths today. But if you kind of go out there and say, oh, I'm really interested in this new technology or this new technique or this new something, and you kind of challenge yourself to make something in that regard, like, and I think that will kind of, like, revitalize your creative juices because you're exploring territory that's new to you, and so it kind of like I said, it kind of like maybe reinvigorates like your passion for the medium and things like that. I'm thinking of like, you know, like when David Lynch kind of got into digital, like when it was a new thing, like everybody was like shooting movies on digital, like back in those days, and he like just got right in there with that and started shooting all his shit on digital. He's like, well, shit, I'm gonna do this because I can control, you know, everything about the movie that I can, and he got really into that. So I think it's good, like, not to get stale. You always have to like look for new things to be doing.
Well, it's also the genre too. These are movies,
right?
Okay. We have to ask ourselves, what is a movie? A movie is an old medium. You know, the silent era was the early 1900s. It was a long time ago, man. Okay, and it's slowly being replaced with things like series, like Netflix series type stuff, and video games. Eventually, things like movies will kind of be seen kind of like as it be put in the same fucking genre as maybe like epic poetry. You know, like nobody's reading Beowulf anymore, or, you know, reading
except in school.
Yeah, except in school, you know. But it's
I read it in school.
You know, a self-contained story that lasts, you know, an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, and then you had this visual experience that's gone. Well, back in the day, a visual experience, an audio-visual experience was a big deal on film. Now, everybody, children are growing up with these little things, with constantly bombarded with audio-visual experiences mixed with fucking information, and they don't experience things the way we do. You know what I mean? Like, it was a big deal to see a music video when we were kids. Because you didn't choose when it was going to happen. You had to be sitting in front of a fucking tube, and you had to wait for them to play it. And you'd probably never see it again. Man, I saw a Bauhaus video. And you did? Yeah, oh yeah. Then later on, you know, fucking you could buy the VHS, and the VHS tape might be $60, $70, and that was a lot of money back then. You try to bootleg it. It wasn't until the 90s, you know, people were bootlegging VHS stuff. But in the 80s, you didn't have control over the medium like you did today. Now, with the press of a button, you can see and hear anything. So people are kind of spoiled. Movies aren't really where it's at. Video games are a lot more compelling, you know? Like, I love the Fallout series. They're going to make a mini-series about Fallout. So
I'm actually shocked it took them this long to do it.
I like the merchandising from that property. You can buy posters and little statues that represent things that were.
Well, I like anything. Well, that's kind of what I thought was so cool about that is they have a real commitment to the theming.
Yeah.
And I like that they just have this whole, I mean, they made a whole entire universe with all of these little things in it and all of this kind of like multimedia. I think that's like really, really cool.
One of the girls from club, she died of cancer. Another one that died of cancer. What was her name again? One that worked at the, she was a waitress for a while.
Yeah.
What was her name? Do you remember? She wasn't a good friend of ours, but we used to see her every now and then. What was her name? She died, I guess, about a year ago, 2 years ago.
Something like that.
She was way into, she was young. Died of internal cancer. I think it was kind of like ovarian cancer or something. Just ate her up. She actually she loved Fallout. Goth chick. When she wasn't in the club walking around.
Amber, her name.
Amber, that's right. Poor Amber. When she was just walking around during the daytime, she wore Vault-Tec clothes. She had Vault-Tec stuff. They actually had branded clothes.
Yeah.
That's fucking genius.
Well, yeah, like I said, you can completely
genius.
Immerse yourself in this entire world.
Yeah.
And just, I don't know. I just think that's pretty awesome that it's like they have this whole team of people and they just come up with this whole entire universe and they make everything in it.
Yeah, and
that's so cool to me.
Yeah, and the amount of money that generates over time, because you're not dependent on a theater. People have it in their computer and they're playing it, and they play it for years and years, and new people join in. So a secondary market for products that are related to that universe emerges, and they'll actually have Fallout branded stuff.
I mean, and that's just an extension of what they started doing in with movies, obviously.
Yeah.
But
movies were the prototype. Star Wars,
right?
Toy merchandising.
Yeah,
And
I mean, they had done it kind of like half-assed before then because they did it with Star Trek and all that kind of stuff. But
it was never any good.
I think like Star Wars was kind of like when the big, oh my god, we can sell like all these toys, like all this merchandise that has to do with the movie, and that was like where everybody jumped on that bandwagon. Well, and like I said, during the 80s, like shit, man, even all the cartoons that were on during the 80s were all like basically half-hour long commercials for toys. Like they thought of the toy line first and they're like, make a cartoon that like with these characters in it so we could sell the toys.
Well, the Fallout is like a movie, and it's a series of movies. Everything you do in the game is like a movie. There's a story and you're involved and you're controlling it, you're doing stuff, and it's all these little movies that you're watching basically, and you're interacting with it inside this video game. It's like a virtual world, the mission-based stuff. Kind of like Morrowind, but a lot better, which goes back to like wizardry, back on the Apple IIe, fucking, boy, times have changed, huh? And you could probably put that game in a watch now, but that's how little data that game involved. But, the future is those video games, and they're going to be like in a metaverse. No movie will be able to compete with it, but I think movies will still exist.
Yeah. I mean, it's still an art form. Like, what I mean? It's like people still do paintings, and sculptures.
Right. It will exist.
They still write novels.
It just won't be as dominant. There won't be as
because there's other choices. But like, I don't think they're going anywhere. Because the thing about movies that people like is, they kind of incorporate a lot of different artistic things in one thing. It's like, it's visuals, it's music, it's, it's a story, it's all this other kind of stuff going on. And like I said, video games are like the next iteration of that, because you can actually immerse yourself into the story and like play it the way you want to play it. But I don't, like I said, because novels haven't gone anywhere, paintings haven't gone anywhere. So I don't think movies
Poetry's
are going.
Gone.
Well, it's not gone, but it's like not that
songs now.
Not that many people, right? But I would argue that like music is a form of poetry, so I don't really like think of it as gone.
But for Hollywood, I'm just pointing at Hollywood. For Hollywood and Disney to survive, they've got to listen to the customer. They've got to change their ways. They've got to be making things that make fucking money, and they just lose money now. Which they need, making a fucking Fallout series, I don't know who's going to carry it. If it's done well, that would be badass. I'd like to see it.
I'd be interested to see it. I don't know. I think
you could really fuck that up. Well,
that's what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking.
It has to be done right.
Because it's like, I mean, I don't know.
Look how they fucked up Blood Rain.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I kind of feel like... anytime you're taking something, and there's exceptions, of course, but anytime you're taking something that was like already a video game, a beloved video game, and you're kind of taking it back a step and making it into a movie or a series, that's like a really hard row to hoe, you know what I mean? Because it's just kind of like people have already experienced it like immersively, and now you're kind of like, you're almost kind of like freezing it into like, oh, we're making a movie in this universe that you like, but you can't control that universe that you like you're used to. So I think that's maybe why movies based on video games usually don't turn out that good. There are exceptions to that, of course, but I feel like maybe
I thought the Lara Croft movies were okay.
But they were just okay. They weren't great. Well, I mean, I would rather watch you play the video game than watch the movies, to be honest.
And, you know, fucking, the best thing about it was what's her name, the actress, shit, Brad Pitt's fucking, Angelina Jolie. Angelina Jolie did a pretty good job in them. You know, her and her boobs. But, you know. And I did practical effects mostly. It was all right. You know, it was, what was it, late 90s? When those movies came out?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Okay. John Smith said Blood Rain was made by Uwe. How do you pronounce it? Uwe Boll, yeah. That guy that like wants to like box people that shit on his movies.
Yeah.
Well, he was kind of known for that. Like he's known for making video game adaptations that are terrible. So, you know, I think that was just him mostly. I mean, I think probably you have a better chance nowadays because I kind of feel like for a long time, you know, they started wanting to, like in the 90s, they were like, oh, we should make, you know, a video game based on this video game property. But they didn't really, like, take the video games all that seriously or, like, think of the lore behind the game or anything like that the way they would nowadays. Because nowadays I kind of feel like, you know, most video games are kind of more like a movie anyway. So it's kind of easier to make it into, like, a movie or a series property. Whereas back then they were just kind of like, I don't know, isn't there like there's Mario and Luigi and it's like there's mushrooms and it's like let's write a story about that. It's like it doesn't have to make any sense. They won't give a shit. You know what I mean? Like they didn't really care.
Yeah.
So because
it was a one-time thing with a built-in audience. They just put it out there and they go see it in the movie. They don't like it, but you get your money. Cha-ching. That's all it was. You know, there were some cartoon-based movies that came out that bombed that I liked. Like the Speed Racer movie, I actually liked it. I thought that was pretty cool. I thought its visuals were right.
Wait, the animated one or the live action one?
It was live action with CG. It was crazy as hell.
I remember seeing the trailers for it, but we didn't go see it. I don't think.
Yeah, I saw
it.
We didn't
go
see
it.
It's crazy as hell.
Okay.
Yeah, it looked good though, but it was just like it was. I'd like to see it on acid. It'd be even better on acid.
Yeah. Okay.
Super visual.
Fair enough.
Yeah. It wasn't something you took seriously. You know,
right.
It's like an anime. You know.
Slasher Friends in a Donkey Kong movie would probably be terrible. I was just thinking.
I was thinking,
did anybody make a Pac-Man movie?
That'd be shitty.
Look, I'm an eternal optimist. I was like, you can make a good movie out of anything, but you have to know what you're doing.
I think they did Mortal Kombat. That one had a lot of fans.
They did,
Mortal Kombat.
They did Mortal Kombat.
I don't think they did Street Fighter. No, maybe they probably did.
Yeah, they did.
They did? Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they made a Street Fighter movie. Okay. Well, see, those kind of...
Yeah, I think they did. The dude with the mask.
I mean, yeah, like those kind of games are probably like easier to translate because you could at least do, you know, you got your heroes and villains and you can kind of have like a whole thing. It's like this gang and this faction's fighting against this faction and shit like that. So it's like you kind of have a ready-made conflict there. But if you have something like... You know, like I said, like Pac-Man or Burger Time or something like that.
Burger Time,
the movie.
Remember that one? Yeah.
Now I kind of want to see that. Yeah. Burger Time, the movie. Yeah, John Smith said there was a Pac-Man cartoon when I was a kid. Yeah, I remember that. There was a Pac-Man cartoon. But it's like, I wonder... I don't even remember what happened in it. I remember, like, seeing a couple of episodes of it. But he didn't. Yeah, he was like a character. Like he had feet and like arms and stuff. But I don't remember what it was. Was he in high school? I don't even remember. But you know, I don't remember. John Smith said, "I tried watching Speed Racer on LSD. I gave up after 10 minutes."
Really? Visually, I remembered liking it. There's just these weird candy-colored fucking pastel colors and all this swirling stuff in the cars. The Mach 5 and Pops made a new Mach 5, or first car got wiped out. Then he came up with a Mach 5, and you had what's her name in the helicopter? Wasn't it the girl who played Wednesday Addams? What was her name?
Who, Christina Ricci?
Yeah, I think Christina Ricci was running around flying a helicopter, and I think she played Trixie or something, if I remember correctly.
I don't know.
It's been a long time since I've seen it.
I didn't see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said it hurt my eyes and my brain.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I'd been watching for hours. It was only 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's jumping all over the place. It's like an acid trip.
See, I don't know if I like that so much.
Yeah.
It would probably just like give me a migraine.
It's like you mixed LSD and Coke. You're like, what? I think it was.
See, I don't like that.
It was all over the place.
I don't like that. I'm just like, settle down. And it's not just because I'm old. Well, maybe it is because I'm old. But I can't really like watch that kind of.
It's probably you can probably see it for free. Well, I'll show it to you.
I remember because I remember when we were going to the theater. Like I remember seeing the trailer.
Yeah.
And I was like, nah, I don't think I really have any interest in seeing that. But I didn't like the cartoon back in the day.
It's a movie that's trying to be as frenetic as a fucking Japanese anime. It's just you know how the edit in Japanese anime is kind of insane. It's like that.
And I'm just kind of like, I don't need that in my life. You know what I mean?
I used to love that cartoon when I was a kid. Speed Racer.
I know, like I don't know, I didn't like it. Like my brother kind of liked it, but I was just kind of like, I couldn't get into it.
And then right next to it in California, I think right before it, they had another Japanese cartoon that they Americanized it. They called it Giant Robot. I think it was called. No, it was called Gigantor. That's what it was called. Gigantor.
I remember that.
And Gigantor in Japan was called Tetsujin 28, I think. Tetsujin 28. And he was just this big barrel-chested fucking robot, and a kid would control it with a joystick on remote control back in the 30s. It started off black and white. Look at it from the 30s and the 40s. It was pretty good. The Japanese were into the robots fucking even before the war. I think it was 30s or 40s maybe. I think somebody might correct me. That could have been 60s. I don't know. But it seemed to be old, like an old Mickey Mouse cartoon.
That's okay. That's kind of cool.
Tetsujin 28, I think is what it was called. Here they called it fucking Gigantor.
John Smith said, yeah, I had taken 2 tabs. The trip lasted 18 hours.
Damn.
Yeah, they last a long time. And was a bit much. Later that night, I watched Noah and was terrified of it.
Oh, yeah,
I could see that.
Yeah.
I don't think I would like to watch that on LSD. That might be a little bit upsetting.
El Shaddai gonna come fucking punish you.
Mr. 88 said, Pixels is a live action all about vintage video games. Yeah, I keep like hearing about that, but I never did watch it. It has an awesome Pac-Man sequence and is a fun watch. Yeah, I heard it was like pretty fun. Somebody like Camp Guy saying, I'm surprised they haven't made a real good story about the life of Ed Gein. They did in 2001 starring Steve Railsback called Gein. Actually, there was one from the 70s called Deranged, which we reviewed it not too long ago. And that one was actually really good. It wasn't real like based in reality, but it was very loosely based on Ed Gein. And I actually really liked it much better than I was expecting to. Yeah. Oh, Pat just brought that up. Yeah. Deranged. It's pretty good. Like I said, it's not, his name isn't Ed Gein, but that's clearly who they're talking about. You know what I mean? Zach said, I once watched Skyfall while really, really stoned. Yeah. And I couldn't stop crying when Judi Dench died. Yeah. I get it.
Yeah, Zach's a fellow fucking James Bond fucking lover, man. I love James Bond too, man. It's like Daniel Craig's Bond is my favorite Bond. I would say next to him, I liked fucking the one from Living Daylights, but I didn't like the second one. What was that guy's name?
Was that Timothy Dalton?
Dalton.
Yeah.
Timothy Dalton.
Because he was only in 2 of them.
He was only in 2, and I only liked the first one. The second one was a little... I mean, he was a good Bond in it, but the story's a little weak. The first Timothy Dalton fucking was almost kind of like a Daniel Craig movie. I liked it. a perfect Bond movie.
I mean, they were trying to go more gritty back then, but I mean, 90s gritty isn't the same as like nowadays gritty.
And people complained about the grittiness, so they brought back kind of the fucking Roger Moore kind of cheese.
Yeah.
For the second one, I mean, it was still good, but it wasn't that good, you know. I mean, they were parachuting into the wedding and shit. Him and Felix. Yeah. Yeah, he's going to Felix's wedding.
I remember that.
And Felix's wife got killed and shit. There was some cheese in it, but
some people like that though. It's like, just well, because I mean, John Smith said I like campy Roger Moore Bond. Yeah. Like I said, it's some people, and that's fair. Like I kind of like the more grounded Bond, but I can see if you like the more kind of cheesy or the more kind of retro or vintage one.
Zach, if you like Craig, man, see Living Daylights. That's a good one. What happened?
I don't know. I'm just reading this stuff. Okay. Danny Rowling said that film where Christian Bale had a meltdown must have been a shit show to make. Yeah, which one is that? Because I feel like Christian Bale does that on all of his movies. Maybe not all of them, but Christian Bale's a method actor, yeah? Isn't he method? Which I'm sure is like a fucking nightmare for everyone else involved because you have to like. They have to act like the character like all the time, and you have to interact with them like the character all the time. So, we still haven't done The Machinist. That's another speaking of Christian Bale.
We need to start this material. We haven't even got on it yet. We're an hour in at least.
Not really. I mean, we're talking about movies.
We're still talking about the movies. This part of the show. We don't even really have to do this material.
I mean, we're going to.
It's a free flowing show.
But
you know.
Well, yeah. Well, that's I kind of like these kind of topics. They're kind of difficult in one way because, like I said, there's so much info out there that it takes me a long time to kind of like winnow it down to like a few things that I want to talk about. But when we do the show, it's actually like a lot less stressful because I figure, well, I have like a lot of stories. If we don't get to all of them, then that's okay. You know what I mean? So you can just kind of, and we can kind of go off on other tangents about other movies and things like that because I'm sure you guys have some likes of shit too. John Smith said no one ever seems to use method acting to play anyone nice. Right. That's the point that I'm making. And it's like everybody that's a method actor, it's like, oh, that I think they just use that as an excuse to just walk around like acting like a fucking ass all the time. I think that's what they want to do ultimately. Even though they might not like admit that to themselves. They're just like, I just want an excuse. I'm method. I'm just going around acting like a douchebag because that's what my character is. But yeah, nobody goes around acting like a nice person. I don't know how I feel about that. Terminator Salvation with Christian Bale. Okay, so that was what we talked about. I don't think I've seen that movie actually. Pat says you can do the material on the next show. Yeah, probably. And let me see if there's anything else because I'm kind of waiting for him to come back before I get on it. Yeah, Zach's saying some of the James Bond movies were disasters behind the scenes, but you'd never guess it. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like it always kind of like amazes me more when you hear about these horrible stories that come out and like there were all these fucking disasters that happened behind the scenes, but then the movie still came out good. Because when I think about it, you know, it's easy for me to like sit here in my office and like shit on movies and everything, but so much has to go right for a movie to come out good that I'm honestly amazed like when any movie comes out good because there's like so much shit that could totally go wrong and so much shit that could because there's so many moving parts, you know what I mean? And just like one or two things like being disastrous can kind of like bring down your whole shit, you know what I mean? So I'm actually more amazed that there are as many good movies as there are, you know what I mean? You would think that with all the nightmare that you have to go through to like make one, like you'd think that they would all suck. So the fact that there's like actually a lot of good ones is amazing. I also love when the behind the scenes story is more entertaining than the movie itself, like The Room. Yeah. Thank you, Bryce. Thank you very much.
Bryce breaking it off. Look at Bryce breaking it off. Thank you, my man.
Said, agreed, I think method acting is an excuse to be a diva. See, I'm kind of like thinking that too because, so John Smith made the point, it's like no one ever uses a method actor like when they're playing a nice character. That it's always like when they're a douche or like a serial killer.
Having acted myself, method acting really only makes sense on stage. If you're method acting in a movie, you're gonna fucking be shooting yourself in the foot because you're constantly doing the same shit over and over and over. Makes more sense to just be robotic, be like a robotic liar. That's all.
Yeah, because like you
You're
said,
right.
that's what. See, that's why I don't think that I could ever be like an actor like in movies because I feel like a lot of it's just fucking tedious, man.
Yeah.
You have to do the same fucking thing like over and over and over.
Some of the shit
again.
that we did in drama school, me and Graham, and Gramthars, he's in there. He was in the same program. Then later, when I went to Brazil, I did some more leads with like Fantastics and stuff. You have to brainwash yourself that you are that character.
Yeah.
And it really helps you in front of a live audience, especially if you got to sing numbers, because it was always musicals. And if you're up there in your own character, you're going to be under a lot of fucking stress. It's better if you've convinced yourself you're this character.
Yeah.
So if he fucks up, it's not on you. So you're just going through the motions of being this character. You're channeling it, and you're under a lot less stress. So I think method acting probably helps with that a lot.
Yeah, I could see that.
Because it's not you anymore. You become. That's what they're talking about. How mental illness kicks in a lot if you're doing that, because you're putting yourself into alter egos, and all you're doing one job after the next is pretending to be somebody else. You don't really have much of a character of your own. If you're doing that for fucking 20, 30 years.
That's what I'm saying. It's like,
Yeah.
so I'm actually more surprised that
Yeah.
like more actors aren't just like completely batshit crazy, because that would drive me crazy.
Yeah.
Like after a while, because you would feel like you wouldn't have an identity of
Yeah.
your own anymore, because you're always like playing someone else.
Yeah, that guy from Elephant Man and fucking Silence of the Lambs, what was his name? Fucking
Anthony Hopkins.
Anthony Hopkins, man.
Anthony
He
Hopkins.
says that it drove him fucking crazy.
But you could see that,
Yeah.
especially if you're constantly playing like really difficult characters, like
Yeah.
he's doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or you have to play like, like I said, serial killers or psychopaths or some shit like that. Yeah, that's gonna fuck with your head. I mean,
Yeah.
you're just human.
He said he liked to do little bitty off-Broadway plays to chill out, because he had instant gratification from the audience.
Yeah, a lot of actors like that.
Because you want to hear and feel their reactions to what you're doing. It's the same thing with us doing this show, having a live stream right there with the comment section. We know what you guys are feeling. We're interacting. That helps a lot.
It does. It's
helps
much
a lot.
easier.
Yeah.
In some ways, it's easier. Like I still
Yeah.
like worry that it's like, that I'm gonna fuck up and there's gonna be dead time and stuff like that. But in some ways, it's easier on the live show, like with you, than
Yeah.
it is doing recorded stuff just on my own, because like I have somebody
Spotlight's
to
on
bounce
you.
off of.
Yeah. Yeah, the spotlight's on you, and there's nothing to bounce anything off of.
Right.
You gotta. It's one long guitar solo,
Yeah.
basically.
I've kind of gotten used to it now, like, because what I tend to do though is like I usually have really good notes, and I just pretend that I'm talking to you guys, like
right.
even if I'm just recording it.
What a YouTube live stream is a modern version of a 1970s talk show, like Merv Griffin. It's basically
You're the
what it is.
elevator killer.
Yeah.
Merv
You guys don't know what she's talking about. Y'all might not be old enough. But, yeah, like Merv Griffin or the Letterman show, there was a live audience he was bouncing off of, and they're talking about subjects. But it all has to be condensed into a little bit of time. I think it was, once the commercials pulled out, probably only 35 minutes. 35 minutes of material. And there was a stand-up thing in the introduction in the very beginning. This is really kind of similar to that, mixed with a radio show. That's what it's like doing them.
Yeah. And mixed with just like kind of bullshit.
Yeah, bullshit. Well, they bullshitted too,
and
though.
hanging out and drinking. And
The only reason why they didn't bullshit more back then is because they were they were hurting for time. It was corporate time. If they had unlimited time, it would have been like this.
they would have just gone on for hours.
Yeah,
and
they'd
hours
have gone
like
on forever
we
and
do.
hours. Yeah. Now they drank on them too.
Yeah, back in the day
they
did.
drank on those shows.
Back in the day they did.
Especially the game shows. Hollywood Square, they were fucking loaded on Hollywood Square most of the time. You could see
Man, that shit was so funny.
Hollywood Square was fucking funny. You could see him fucking in between breaks, turning around like that, and fucking drinking like that, and putting that drink.
Bringing the flask.
Yeah, bring the flask.
Yeah.
Yeah. Phyllis Diller fucking built out of a fucking flask, and hiding it when the camera came on her and shit. Whatever.
Phyllis Diller was in Mad Monster Party too.
Yeah.
That what I just talked about today. There was a little puppet of her.
Yeah.
Talking like her.
Yeah, and old Lind, what was his name?
Paul Lind.
Paul Lind. Paul Lind would be fucking the center square on the Hollywood Square, and he was really the funniest one.
He was,
You guys don't know who he was.
He was funny.
He was just this real brilliant, fucking flaming gay dude who was just fucking hilarious. He was a legend, all right? And his wit was fucking sharp as a razor. And he'd be drunk off his ass. Well, see what happened is they would record a whole week's worth of fucking shows in a single session. So you could see as the shows were coming up, by Friday, Lynn was fucking
Everybody's kind of like falling asleep in the square.
Yeah.
It's been a long day, you guys.
Yeah.
They're all like fucking.
Yeah.
They're all slurring their words and whatnot.
Hey, what was his name? B. Arthur. Wasn't she in there?
She might have been. Yeah, they had like a lot of people on there.
And then what was his name? Uncle Walt. They called him. I think they called him Uncle Walt. Another gay guy.
Who? Milton Berle?
No, wasn't. What am I thinking of?
I thought when.
I think he might have been. I think he might have been the guy who played on Bewitched. Fucking Dr. Bombay. Wasn't he in the Hollywood Squares too? You guys could help me out. There was a guy like that. He was just another old queen in his 60s, and he was fucking funny too.
Mango said, great review of Mad Monster Party, a forgotten animation classic. Yeah, I hadn't seen it for a very long time. And it's kind of sad because it doesn't get the same play as like all of the Rankin Bass, like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and Rudolph Shiny New Year and Frosty the Snowman and all that kind of stuff that you get. But it's, it's had fucking Boris Karloff and Phyllis Diller.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they were like and they were monsters. It was Dracula and the Mummy and shit like that.
I've got to mention Foster Brooks. Yeah.
Yeah, that was like the golden era of the funny drunk.
Yeah. Funny drunk fucking Hollywood people.
Well, there was kind of like a whole subgenre, I feel like, of comedy that was just like people that were drunk drunk bums.
The king of them all would be Buddy Hackett. Buddy Hackett was just this fucking drunk, make you laugh.
That's the thing. Mango said, I have it on DVD. I'm assuming he means Mad Monster Party. Had to get it imported from the States. Yeah, you don't really see it all that much. I think that you didn't see it on TV as much as the Christmas ones just because it was longer. You know what I mean? It was like, it was feature length. It was an hour and a half, which I was surprised because I didn't remember it being that long. Richard Brown said, Oliver Reed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Back in the day, man, everyone was fucking drunk.
Yeah.
It amazes me that they got the shit accomplished as fucking
they flaunted it
drunk
too.
As they must have been.
And they flaunted the fact that they were drunk and high a lot.
Yeah.
They didn't have any issue with that in the 70s. They were tougher people. They were coming out of they were the boomer they were actually pre-boomer generation, World War II style generation. They were hard, man. They were lucky to be alive.
Yeah, so they were like, well, I'm just going to fucking drink and smoke. Man. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, I don't give a fuck. That's exactly what they were. I made it through that shit. Fuck it. The rest of the time, we're going to fucking drink. This is a vacation.
We're just going to party.
Got nothing to lose.
Yeah, I kind of feel like there was a lot of that. Slasher Fred said, one of these days on your show, either on Sunday or Wednesday, you should do a review of the 1972 British classic Tales from the Crypt and its follow-up, The Vault of Horror. I've actually wanted to do those for a while because they're anthologies. And I really, really like horror anthologies. I've seen both of them like multiple times. But yeah, maybe we should do like a double feature. That'd be neat. Good. Mango says, I'm drunk. All hail Oliver Reed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting there.
I'm going to send him over to your place and he's going to take his clothes off and y'all going to wrestle. In front of the fireplace. And Zach's going to record that shit.
Just on the bearskin rug or whatever.
Yeah, Zach's going to record that shit.
Yeah. Okay.
He's going to direct and record. Whole camera crew and everything.
John Smith said, Oliver Reed died the most Oliver Reed death ever. Heart attack, arm wrestling, English sailors after drinking shots all day.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, that's kind of how we all want to go out, really. That's fucking legendary.
Yeah.
Holy shit. All right, so you want to talk about some of this kind of stuff?
Go ahead.
So the first one I want to talk, you might know something, maybe a little bit about this. I'm not sure if you do or not. Do you know anything about the movie The Conqueror? Because I feel like Howard Hughes was kind of like involved in this.
Wasn't that about Genghis Khan?
Yeah. And like with John Wayne.
John Wayne, yeah.
Playing
Genghis Khan.
Yeah, which...
he's in Yellowface.
Yeah.
That's how you did it back then.
This was 1956.
Yeah.
It's like,
I saw it, though.
We're not going to, like, hire an actual Asian actor to play that character.
Nobody show up. What are you talking about? They wanted John Wayne to be the... It's called acting. He's just acting like he...
I'm acting like
he's just
I'm
acting
Mongolian.
Like he's Mongolian. He's going around fucking... All right, now you guys get on top of those horses. Yeah.
I'm totally Mongolian.
Yeah. We're Mongolian as fuck.
Pilgrim. I mean.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this movie came out in 1956. Generally regarded as one of the worst movies ever made. I haven't seen it, so I can't really make a judgment call on that in that regard. But the thing about it is that why it became so famous, not because it was like necessarily like super shitty, which I've heard that it was, but it's famous because it was actually filmed downwind of a nuclear testing site. And an alarming number of cast and crew members later got cancer and died. Yeah. What actually ended up happening? So the nuclear testing site that we're talking about was the Nevada National Security Site. This was from like 1951 to 1963. Now, what they did in 1953, this place, they called it Operation Upshot Knothole, which I was like, can you think of a better name than that? That's like very clunky. But anyway, so that whole thing was they set off 11 atomic bombs in that area, almost all of which were bigger than the Hiroshima bombs.
Yeah.
Now, 2 of the bombs, which they always gave them names because, of course, they did.
They were expensive.
Yeah.
And they had a lot of fucking people watching them, so it were an event to go watch an atomic bomb go off.
Yeah.
We're going to watch it. They're going to start off Little John. Okay, let's watch Little John blow up.
This one is like Simon.
Yeah.
One of them was named Simon, and the other one was named Harry.
This one's fucking Big Bertha. You know, they just had all kinds of names. Look, first of all, y'all are pussies. Okay, you're all weak generation of people. But the younger you are, the weaker you are. Worried about setting off these atomic devices. Okay, so we set off an atomic bomb. That's the end of the world. You go look at the numbers. The above ground nuclear testing when you put together the United States, the Soviet Union, and Europe, because Europe was doing some of it too. They had little islands where they could send shit up. I think France set some off. I looked at the total number of fucking above ground nuclear blasts that mankind together did. It was over 100. They set off a lot of those things, man. A lot. So, was it good? No. But they did it. And people got cancer. But it wasn't the end of the world, you know. And the governments knew, too. But and they wanted to use it. They wanted to see how sick people would get, how many would die. That was the thinking. To give them an idea of what nuclear warfare would be like. What are the actual risks? But no, they did it.
John Smith says, worst yellow face, classic Doctor Who's Talons of Wang Chiang.
My favorite one. That's my favorite one.
I remember that episode.
Yeah,
it's kind of notorious.
It's a good episode. It's a good.
It's
that story has, I think, 6 or 7 episodes in it. I like that one. But Mr. Singh, the fucking homunculus, fucking mechanical pig-brained little robot that was going out killing people, dressed like a Chinese ventriloquist doll. It was good. What was his name? Magnus Greel. He was a time traveler from the 1980s that went back.
Yes, Tom has BritBox, you guys.
Yeah. Well, I grew up watching that shit.
Yeah.
I grew up watching that shit. I wanted to be Doctor Who when I was a little boy. I wanted a TARDIS and everything.
Speaking of BritBox,
yeah.
People have been asking us to review The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover, and I realized that is on BritBox. You still have BritBox,
I have,
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe
I gotta watch the old fucking Tom Baker.
Maybe we should review that other movie then. Because before it was like hard for me to find, but then I saw it was on BritBox. And I was like, oh, you have that.
Yeah.
So, okay.
I was watching Revenge of the Cybermen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he got BritBox just so he could watch like old Doctor Who.
Yeah. Old Doctor Who's better than the new Doctor Who.
I haven't seen the new Doctor Who, so I wouldn't know.
I
was a big fan.
The Tennant one was okay. The first,
I like David Tennant.
The first dude was better.
I like Christopher Eccleston.
Yeah, he was better.
I saw him in a bunch of other things before I even knew that he was a Doctor Who.
Yeah.
So like I like him as an actor.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Just.
But fucking for me, Tom Baker is always going to be Doctor Who. Yes.
I mean, yeah, you're probably not the only person to think that. But yeah. So okay. So what were the So the bombs were named Simon and Harry. So like I said. So these two in particular caused a lot of fallout. So the fallout from these two particular bombs drifted into St. George, Utah, which was about 140 miles away. So because of the way the wind blew and everything like that, like a lot of this fallout would settle over this area of Snow Canyon. Now, the year after they were detonated, the movie The Conqueror filmed in Snow Canyon, and they were there for 13 weeks. Now, Howard Hughes was the producer on this movie, and Bill Powell was the director. And there is evidence that they knew about the radiation beforehand and just said, fuck it. Or at least Howard Hughes, I guess he had gotten some... the Atomic Energy Commission, they said, oh, it's fine. It's fine. Probably no one will. It's totally safe. Now, John Wayne, even back in these days, like John Wayne was like, I don't really trust that, so he brought a Geiger counter, like thinking, I don't think this is as safe as they're telling me. So basically they had, like, while they were filming, it's the desert, so, the temperatures, you're going to get, like, 120 degrees. That's Fahrenheit, 49 Celsius if you're not American. And because of all of the dust and the dirt that came up, like, during filming, some of which was, they wanted it as part of the movie, so they, like, had big fans that were, like, blowing all the dust around and stuff. And everybody would just be, like, covered with this fucking dirt, and they'd have to, like, hose them off at the end of the day. And also, Howard Hughes, at the end of this shoot, like, he actually took a bunch of the radioactive dirt back to Los Angeles, like, so they could reshoot, like, on backlots and things like that, so it would look the same. Now, a couple years after the shoot, several members of the cast and crew started getting cancer at wildly inflated rates, like, way, way higher than average. So, Bill Powell, the director, John Wayne... the woman that played his love interest and one of the co-stars of Agnes Moorehead was in it. They all died of cancer within 25 years of the movie being released. There was another actor named Pedro Armendariz, I think. He actually got cancer as well and like learned it was terminal, and he killed himself. By 1980, 90 members of the 220 person crew had gotten cancer, and 46 of them had died. That's a lot. That's like very much higher than average. So basically, like, they did a study of it, and like basically they said that's about 3 times the usual rate. So yeah, I mean, obviously this was probably caused by the fucking radiation. So now Howard Hughes did not get cancer, but he apparently felt really bad about this whole shit show and came out against nuclear power in his later years. In 1957, which was only like a year after the movie came out, he actually, very famously again, spent $12 million of his own money buying all the existing prints of this movie, The Conqueror, so no one could see it. Because that's how much of a shit show it was. So, yeah, there's that. So, a couple of these are just kind of like little short things before we get into like the main movies that I want to talk about. But I wanted to bring up Deliverance from 1972. We have done a review of Deliverance like a long time ago. But one of the things, like a couple of things that happened behind the scenes on Deliverance in particular, James Dickey and John, who is the screenwriter, and John Borman, who is the director, they got in at least one fist fight, so there was that too. Also,
Because they were men.
Men can't even be around one another without punching one another.
They had to fucking solve the shit, man. You wouldn't understand. They fucking make sure that shit's right.
We understand. It's just that's like what kindergartners do.
No, that's just what it's about. Like I said, that's how men are gonna solve that shit, man.
And also kindergartners.
Mm-hmm.
So, but John Borman, his big thing was he didn't really seem to give a shit about it's like all this like stunt double business. You know what I mean?
Yeah, okay.
I want all of my actors, and there were some big actors in this, right? I want them all to do their own stunts.
Yeah.
Burt Reynolds actually once famously said he thought that John Borman was very adamant about filming the movie in chronological order, which they don't usually do. He's like, I think that he wanted us to film it in chronological order in case one of us dropped dead, in case one of us died, like doing one of the stunts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like Burt Reynolds said that.
Yeah, that's a shout out to Burt Reynolds. Burt Reynolds is that's the Southern James Bond right there. That's the real James Bond.
I mean, Burt Reynolds actually was injured in Deliverance. Like he was when a canoe, like he was in a canoe and it went over a waterfall and he broke his tailbone.
Yeah.
John Voight, who is also in the film, he you know the sequence where he's climbing up the side of the rock. Mm-hmm. He did that for real, like no harness, no nothing. Yeah. That was not a stunt double.
Hey man, look, fucking Burt also did his own stunts in White Lightning or Gator and in White, or was it White Lightning or White Lightning? White Lightning and Gator were the same series. Remember that? He's hanging on the side of that car as it's jumping, ramping through the air.
That was a crazy fucking stunt.
And hits the ground. He falls into the sand. He was an action star, man. In his day, Burt Reynolds was an action star.
His mustache would have cushioned the fall, I feel like.
He was macho, man. That's what women were into.
Macho
Women were into that look. Women were into that look back in the 70s. He was a man.
Oh, we got somebody. I guess you're a new person. I've just never seen you in the chat before. El Padrino, please do a review of The Toxic Avenger. We probably will eventually because I actually really like that movie. We should probably do more Trauma now that I'm thinking about it. Also, I caught your video where you mentioned Ashita Kim and laughed for hours last night. Was that the Bullshito?
Bullshito, yeah.
I mean, we've talked about Ashita Kim on more than one, but that was like the main show that we did about it.
Ashita Kim lived in a time, he's still around, but he was doing his thing in a time before the mainstream public knew what LARPing was. Okay, that motherfucker's LARPing. LARPing as a ninja.
He was like ahead of his time.
He was ahead of his time.
Is what you're saying.
He was ahead of his time. LARPing as a ninja, promoting in karate magazines, and selling VHS tapes to 14-year-olds. He made a whole fucking career.
I mean,
out
it
of
worked.
That. Yeah.
And we're still talking about him nowadays. So I guess he had some kind of success.
Right. He did not survive the internet because everybody called his bullshit out over time. Ashita Kim.
I mean, you can still get away with bullshit nowadays, but you have to come at it from a different angle.
Totally different angle.
Yeah, you can't. Your shit can't fly like.
I think he believed his own bullshit, though. I think he was.
I really kind of like. Yeah. I don't know. Like, I mean, I know like a bit about him because I researched him for the show, and he really does seem to be somebody that bought into his own.
Yeah, he was a little bit mentally ill. I think.
He did strike
delusional, fantasy prone, delusional character. Thought he was a special forces ninja. I mean, he sold VHS tapes of how to duck underneath windows. Like, that is a fucking ninja technique. How to crouch.
That was my favorite.
Technique. How to throw dirt in somebody's face. That's a fucking ninja technique, you know. Get the fuck out.
Holy shit, I never would have thought of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about you just, like, run away from the danger?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Throw dirt in somebody's face. And that's how you disappear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's basically what Batman does, though. When you think about it, he's not.
That's true.
It's kind of make some smoke and then run, and everybody thinks you disappeared. That's how Batman would have done it. You know.
And then, like, you're still standing there, like.
Well, the Batman character was written to where he couldn't have any guns, so he couldn't just mow people down like a sane man would.
That would be like so much. Well, that'd be because it's too easy. It's too easy. That's why. Nobody would watch that.
You're right. Yeah.
That's boring.
Go up against fucking 7-armed men all with guns, and you got smoke bombs and fists. But that's a superhero. That's a superhero motif, you know.
El Padrino also said, I was going through your videos. I thought you guys would have done something on Jonestown. We did.
We mentioned Jonestown.
No, we did a show about Jonestown, and
Yeah.
it wasn't that long ago. I mean, it's hard for me to say because my sense of time is all fucked up. But I remember doing a show. I'm pretty sure we did a show about Jonestown while we were in this house. So it must have been
Within a year.
within a last year, because we've only lived in this house for like a little over a year. So I'm pretty sure we've done it since then.
Went by
So in
fast,
the past
didn't it?
year, it did. He also said, I lived as a kid in the 80s in Chicago. There was a karate school on every block.
Yeah.
I'm sure he inspired some of those guys. Yeah, it was like very, very big.
Yeah, well, Cal Dante was from Chicago.
Yeah.
They were called the Chicago Dojo Wars, if I remember correctly. That was back in the 70s, which brought in all these fucking ideas like from fucking, Karate Kid, where you got Cobra Kai fighting fucking Miyagi-Do and shit. That came from those fucking those maniacs from fucking. Oh shit! What was the name of his little fucking? They were called
The Black Dragon.
The Black
Fighting
Dragon
Society.
Society. Black Dragon Society. Yeah.
Fighting Society,
Black
right?
Dragon Fighting Society.
Yeah.
That's what it was called. And it was fucking advertised in every fucking Marvel comic that we had when we were looking.
Yeah,
at
it was
back in
always
the
in the
70s.
back of the comic.
Black Dragon Fighting was Count Dante doing his thing, and he had his afro. And he was a white dude with an afro. And he was a hairdresser. That's how he really made his money. And he had a dojo. It's fucking trip, man. Truth is stranger than fiction. And I've seen interviews with some of his former students. They said he was great. That he was great, and that the fucking dojo was great, and they fucking had a great time. And when you think about it, it was like a prototype of MMA, is what they were doing. Kind of like MMA.
El Padrino said, do you remember a show called Spectre Man?
Yeah, I remember the name.
I don't
I
remember
saw
that,
a picture
but you
of
probably,
it. If you
yeah.
mention more about it, I could. Spectreman, I think, was an American name for a Japanese product. I think Spectreman started off as a Japanese thing.
That kind of
And it
does
was-
sound
and
like
it was
something
renamed.
that got, yeah.
Spectreman, I think, was. Wait a minute, Spectreman.
I'm gonna run to the bathroom.
Go ahead. Okay, hold on. Why don't you play your? Hold on.
Because you were talking.
Okay, Spectreman, I think, might have been that Filipino or Indonesian version of Ultraman. I think you could see that free. I think it was like a high quality Indonesian, or not Indonesian, Filipino or Taiwanese. I think it might have been Taiwanese. The cab guy mentioned Ultraman. Camp guy's calling it Ultraman. It wasn't. Spectreman and Ultraman were two different things. But I'd have to be reminded more of what Spectreman was. I'd have to go look and see it, and it might jog my memory. It's not Ultraman. Spectreman was something different. I think it might have been the Taiwanese knockoff of Ultraman, which I think there's only just one movie, if I remember correctly. I don't think it was a series. I think it was a movie, if that's the one I'm thinking of. And it was actually a pretty good movie. All right, Pat says, if I'm remembering right, Spectreman had an awesome theme song, or am I misremembering? El Padilla comes in with two gorillas, one blonde hair gorilla and one blonde hair, Gory, and the chorus, the gorilla. I don't remember that. I don't know if that's. Yeah, I don't remember that. Spectreman he had two gorillas. Nah, I remember the name.
Gorilla? He had two gorillas.
Yeah, he had two gorillas, a blonde gorilla and another. One of them was a blonde gorilla. I don't remember.
And one was a brunette.
Yeah, the blonde gorilla. I don't remember.
Was one a redhead?
I'd have to see it. I remember the name Spectreman. I watched it, but I don't remember it that well.
That's like pretty funny.
It was a cartoon or a live action?
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I ever saw that. I mean, it's entirely possible that I watched it, but I watched so much stuff when I was a kid. Like, sometimes I don't remember it unless somebody, like, brings it up, you know? All right, so, another one I wanted to talk about just very briefly was Roar. If you guys haven't seen this one, it came out in 1981. And this movie often gets described as one of the most dangerous movies ever made. Directed by a guy named Noel Marshall. And it was about a family, and they interacted with lions. And they were real lions. And pretty much like 70, I think at least like 70 cast and crew members got injured on this set. So Noel Marshall, who is the director, is also in the movie. Also has Tippi Hedren, you know, famous for being in The Birds, the Alfred Hitchcock movie. And Melanie Griffith, I think she was only a teenager or maybe in her early 20s. She was like pretty young. This was like kind of before her big like breakout role. And so the three of them like star as this family that kind of live alongside like lions and tigers and like other animals in Africa, right? Now, Noel Marshall, the director and star of the movie, you know, was obviously like, well, we have to use real animals. And, you know, obviously animals gonna animal, and they're not super predictable. So Marshall actually got bit by a lion, like bit like all the way through his hand. That was actually on the first day. Melanie Griffith got attacked by a lion and had to get 50 stitches. And also had to go have facial reconstruction surgery because the lion bit her in the face. Also, Tippi Hedren broke her leg and her hand after an elephant threw her off its back. And she also got attacked by a lion and had to get 38 stitches in her scalp because the lion like grabbed her by the head. So there's that. And honestly, the movie's like pretty batshit crazy if you've never seen it. I'm not really sure why it was made, but yeah. But it's interesting nonetheless. Like I said, Melanie Griffith's very, very early, one of her early roles, and she got fucked up by a lion in it, as did everyone else.
Okay, I see it. Spectrum Man, they got the complete series on YouTube. Yeah, I vaguely remember this one, but I don't think it was. I don't think it was widely available where I was living. I had this one. The one I was confusing with, I think it's called Inframan, which is a movie. Let me see.
I saw that.
Yeah, it's good. Inframan. See if that's on YouTube.
What was the name of that movie? Remember that movie we watched a couple years ago? That was just like the craziest shit ever. That was just like kind of a kung fu movie, and then there was like a guy that was supposed to be Clint Eastwood in it, and then there was mummies, and then there was Laurel and Hardy. No, Abbott Costello, something.
Yeah, they got the full Inframan on there, on YouTube. You might want to see. Oh shit, it's whited it all out. You want to see? Yeah. You want to see Inframan? That's a good one. That's a real good one. It's Taiwanese, I think. And it's like yeah, there you go. It's kind of like Ultraman. My friend put this up there, and he did all the subtitles for it. The subtitles are really good. He was part of Robot Japan, which is like a collector's group that collects Japanese stuff, and he did this one. Okay. Super Inframan.
John Smith said, I know the main lion in Roar was Anton LaVey's old lion. Oh, okay. Yeah. I didn't know that. Yeah, Melanie Griffith did have to have facial reconstruction surgery because a lion bit her in the face. Camp Guy said, they say you'll never even hear it if a mountain lion stalks and attacks you. They attack an unwary prey from behind, which makes sense if you think about it because they're just like looking for food, you know what I mean? El Padrino said, I liked your video on Bob Lazar. That was some funny shit. That was a fun show. I remember doing that one. Remember that show we did about Bob Lazar? Yeah. Yeah, Mr. 88 said, Tippi Hedren is Melanie Griffith's mom. Yeah, that's right. I totally forgot about that. They had pet lions around their house. There are many pictures of them with big cats online. So I guess they were just trying to make, because Mango was saying it's like kind of like a semi-documentary. I think that's kind of what it was. They're like, oh, look how cool it is to like have pet lions like around your house until, you know, it's all fun and games until a lion bites your face off, I guess. But that's kind of what happened on the set. So there was that. Also, I wanted to mention Titanic. Somebody mentioned The Abyss earlier, like the James Cameron movie. And like I said, anytime you're like filming on the water, and James Cameron is notorious for wanting everything to be as realistic as possible. So obviously they're going to like submerge the actors in water tanks and, you know, they get the flu and shit like that. Also, I think one of the most famous things that happened on the set of Titanic was that one crew member, for whatever reason, I guess because they thought it would be funny, spiked some soup, I think it was clam chowder, with PCP.
Oh, man. Why would that be funny?
Damn. I mean, it was funny to the person that did it, I guess.
Yeah.
Not so funny to the 50 people that had to go to the hospital subsequently.
PCP's a fucking gnarly drug, man.
I mean, that's just kind of like, I don't know. You have to have a pretty fucked up sense of humor to be like wanting to do that. Because I kind of feel like it's one of those things where, you know, it's kind of similar to LSD, where it's like, you know, if you're taking it and you know you're taking it and you know like what it's gonna, then it's gonna be a fun time.
Ready for it, right?
But if like somebody just slips it to you and you have no idea, then you're gonna have a bad time. You're gonna have, you're gonna freak out. You're gonna freak out. El Padroni said the worst horror movie of all time, Eaten Alive. I've kind of been wanting to do a review on that, but I haven't seen it in a long time. Because there's two. There was a Tobe Hooper one, and then there was another one. So I'm not real sure. Like right next to that piece of crap, Mickey Blue Eyes. I've heard of that, but I don't think I've ever seen it. All right, so let's start talking about The Wizard of Oz. Yeah. Because a lot of crazy shit.
Don't forget, we got to plug and do commercials this episode.
Okay, well, yeah, I can do that. I had to go to the bathroom, but then you were talking, and I didn't want to, like...
I could have waited till after.
Yeah, Pat said which... Okay, so the Tobe Hooper one is the one you're talking about, yeah. The Tobe Hooper one had the alligator in it, and then there was, like, a cannibal one, too.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen the Tobe Hooper one in a long time. The alligator, yeah, okay. I think it's on Shudder. So, Wizard of Oz. This is another movie that has also been called one of the most dangerous films ever made, because all kind of crazy shit went on behind that. Now, obviously, there weren't a lot of like stunts or anything like that, but there was all kind of crazy shit going on. And as we brought up earlier, the movie came out in 1939. They didn't really have a great deal of protections for the actors at the time, so they just kind of like did whatever. As we mentioned earlier, there was a movie called Under the Rainbow that sort of like was a comedy about the actors that were playing the Munchkins. How much of this is true, I don't know, because as someone pointed out earlier, like Judy Garland said a lot of this stuff, and, you know, she was kind of famously,
high.
Yeah, okay. A lot of the time. So I don't know like how true a lot of this stuff is. But apparently a lot of the little people that worked on The Wizard of Oz were drunk all the time and would do a bunch of I guess like orgies and stuff like in the hotel that they were staying at. There was like all kind of like fucking little people orgies going on. I think it was called the Culver Hotel where they were staying at.
I heard some of the little people afterwards said that it wasn't, that they made it into something that it wasn't that big of a deal. That's
kind of, yeah, it could be that. Like it's kind of become legendary over time that they were doing all kind of crazy shit.
Yeah. It's the interview that I saw with one of the women that said that it was the same thing other people do. You had some people that were fucking around. Most people were just trying to get through the workday. And but yeah, they were drinking and having parties. But she said it wasn't anything unusual.
Well, and I kind of feel like if the regular sized people had been doing that, like nobody would have said anything. Yeah. But there's like, oh, it's the little people doing it, so that makes it funnier.
That's what she said.
Right.
She said it was like, well, we're not children.
Right.
You know, we're older than you.
Right.
You know, it's that kind of deal.
So that might have been like what it was. I kind of suspected.
Right.
One story said though that one of the Munchkin actors got stuck in a toilet bowl. Like during he got lunch it was the lunch break and he got drunk and he got stuck in there and somebody had to pull him out. I don't know if that's true or not. But that was how the story goes. So apparently the cops got called like several times to this hotel because they were like acting up. You know what I mean? So as I said, I don't know how true any of that is. I'm sure it's probably exaggerated. But I kind of feel like poor Judy Garland, she was very young when she made this movie. She was only 16, 17, something like that.
Hollywood fucked her up, too.
Big time.
They got her hooked on all kinds of fucking drugs to keep her skinny.
Yeah.
Ridiculous, but that's how they were back then.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, well, at this time, and we kind of talked about this when we were talking about like the golden era of Hollywood shows that we've done, is that unlike nowadays where actors are more or less free agents, back then you signed a contract with a particular studio, whether it was Universal or MGM or whatever, and you kind of had to do what they said or they would fire you or kick you or penalize you in some way.
Yeah, they had her on methamphetamine.
They did.
Yeah. Keep her fucking skinny.
And that happened a lot. Like, and it wasn't just adults either, because like I
Yeah.
said, she was just a teenager.
Yeah.
And they basically they would want them to work really long hours, so they would give them adrenaline shots.
Yeah.
And they would give them like, barbiturates to
knock them out.
to knock them out.
Yeah.
And they would do that to Judy, and they would give you stuff like for weight loss and everything.
Hollywood
like
doctors.
That. Yeah. Now, I mean, Judy Garland, like I said, she'd already kind of been pill popping before Wizard of Oz because, that was just what you did back then. But once she got on Wizard of Oz, they started giving her more stuff, and then they started putting more diet pills, giving her diet pills too, like to keep her skinny.
You look at some of these people in these old films, and they look really old for their age, and I think a lot of it had to do with the drug use.
Probably, yeah. It was rampant.
Yeah,
rampant.
People think 70s had to do with drug. Fuck no, 1800s. In the 1800s, fucking half of America was either high on coke, and the other half was high on on downers on morphine. Morphine or cocaine. They were doing it back in the 1800s. So by the time the 1900s had rolled around, they were into all kinds of weird shit, and they didn't consider them drugs, really. They didn't think of it as anything illicit. They weren't even expensive. FDA wasn't around yet. It was just totally wide open. You could just go to a store and just buy morphine. Buy fucking cocaine. I think that wasn't until maybe 30s or the 40s they started to control that, huh? I had to go back and look at it. But it was still accepted, you know what I mean? And people making the Hollywood had their own lawyers, their own cops. They owned the police. They owned all the court system in California.
I mean, they covered up some murders pretty
they could kill you and fucking you'd never hear anything of it. They fucking deep claws in any governor of California. They could do whatever they wanted.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you very much.
Just getting here, figured I'd pay a late fee.
Yeah.
Aw. Thank you so much. That's awesome.
So, if Hollywood wanted some starlet to be skinny over the next couple of years, they had their own doctors to write out any kind of prescription. Nobody would ask anything. They were powerful, and they were dangerous. They were gangsters, basically.
Well, like I said, on Wizard of Oz, Judy Garland was only 16, 17 years old, and very famously, behind the scenes, the producers and shit like that called her the fat little pig with pigtails. That's what they called her.
Judy Garland?
Yeah.
Damn.
And she wasn't fat.
She wasn't fat, but they were just weird. I mean, this is a world where fucking Errol Flynn was able to buy a 15-year-old sex slave, basically, from her parents. He'd have her fucking up in the house. He had a special two-way mirror above the bed. He'd have all his friends come over and fuck her, and he'd sit up there and watch and shit. It was a fucking weird time, man.
I mean, there was all kind of shit.
All kinds of weird shit was going on.
That I think was like more, in a way, it was like more, it wasn't more acceptable just, generally. It was just like they just kind of looked the other way.
Yeah.
Either they didn't know about it or
they couldn't comprehend it, or they're just like, well, yeah. You're like, man, that girl's 15. Like, well, yeah. They didn't really have a strong notion of being underage in the early 1900s anyway. That wasn't really a thing. Most states you could marry a girl at probably about 13, so they didn't really have a pedophilia concept, I don't believe. And some of the stuff, when you looked at Shirley Temple, the way she's filmed and everything, and certain things that happened in the Little Rascals, they kind of fucking were selling these children as kind of like sex symbols.
They did sexualize them to some degree.
Yeah. fucking Spanky and Alfalfa trying to get a date off of Miss Crabtree. That was, that's kind of funny, you know what I mean? But you wouldn't joke around with that nowadays, And
that would be like, people would be like, eh.
Right. And certain things in Shirley Temple movies, she's basically being shot as if she is a miniature adult sex symbol in a way that she's ultra cute and, hey, she's kind of available, and she, that's really the way that was kind of shot. And adult guys are kind of like, professing love to her, in certain scenes, It's supposed to be innocent, but you could interpret it another way.
It's a little bit creepy.
Yeah.
It's a little bit creepy.
And
it's just kind of like, remember the show that we did about Lewis Carroll and his thing with, like, Alice Liddell?
Yeah.
Like, who Alice in Wonderland was sort of based on? It's like, even if it was innocent at the time, like, even if it's still, like, from the perspective of nowadays, it seems pretty creepy.
I'm not sure it was all that innocent.
I don't think it was either. It seems pretty creepy. Because why would a grown man, like, that's not your daughter, that's not, like, it just seems like just a weird
it's because
situation.
In the early 1900s, there was no concept of childhood. Everyone was basically
I
adult.
get that.
They were working in mines and doing shit. They were just, I think they just considered them to be smaller adults, and look how cute that is. They're like us. That seemed to be what they were. I mean, little kids smoked.
Yeah.
They walk around with a fucking cigarette coming out of their mouth, and he's like fucking 7, 6, smoking. So, it was just another world, So I guess if you were, according to Albert Fish, you know what I mean? Fucking, he was fucking children too. Now he was from around that time, so it was going on.
Well, yeah, of course.
All you gotta do is just look at what was happening.
I'm just saying that doesn't make it right.
No,
just because
what was happening in orphanages and stuff, and
that was like fucking horrifying.
So they did it.
They didn't really have any, like you said, they didn't really have any concept of like a kid is like a different than an adult.
No,
which I don't think that's a good. Like,
they saw them as miniature, helpless adults that they could kind of play with, I guess.
El Padrino said, I was going to say Alfalfa, but everyone stated that he was just an asshole.
Yeah.
I heard that too. Yeah, like, I heard that Alfalfa was, like, a huge asshole. Like, even when he was a kid. Just terrible. I kind of feel like we should probably do a show about the Little Rascals. Like, a couple years back, it's probably, like, a couple years ago now, but me and Tom got, like, on a kick where we were just, like, watching, like, all the Little Rascals, like, shorts back in the day. But I think, like, Spanky was probably my favorite, but there's some of those were pretty funny. But yeah, like, from a modern standpoint, they are, like, pretty weird. I understand that was, like, almost 100 years ago, and, like, the culture was a lot different, but I don't know. I do kind of feel like, and it's weird that we were talking about Shirley Temple just now, because I think initially they wanted Shirley Temple to play Dorothy in Wizard of Oz. Because I think initially they wanted, like, Dorothy in the book, I think is, like, a younger character. I think they wanted her to be more like a 12-year-old, which I think is one of the reasons that they were like kind of like riding Judy Garland so hard about like not getting like bigger, like, staying thin and everything, because they wanted her to look more like a 12-year-old, even just as she's clearly, honestly, when I was growing up and I was watching Wizard of Oz, because I saw Wizard of Oz like a million times when I was a kid, I actually thought that Judy Garland was older than a teenager. Like, I thought she was just, like, supposed to be a teenager or, like, a young adult. And I was actually surprised when I found out that she was only 17 in that movie, because to me, she looked older than that. But I don't know. I mean, she definitely doesn't look like a kid. They wanted her to look more like a 12-year-old, but she clearly does not look like a 12-year-old.
Judy Garland?
Yeah, like in Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
I was just saying that it's like, I was actually surprised that I found out she was only 17, because I thought she was probably in her early 20s in that movie, but she's not. She's only 17.
Yeah, she looks a lot older.
She does. But they actually initially they wanted Shirley Temple to be in that movie, because they wanted like a more 12-year-old looking kid. Which, like I said, was probably why they were like getting on her case so much about like not gaining any weight. Another
Making
thing,
her skinny wouldn't make her look younger, though.
well, that's what I'm saying. It's just like, I don't know.
She's pretty thin, isn't it? So but
I mean, she's just normal size.
yeah,
She's not.
She looks like a 20-year-old though, like you said.
I thought,
18,
yeah,
19.
I thought she looked older than 17, like in the movie. She doesn't.
She's
look
cute
like
though. She's cute.
She is,
She's
but she
real
doesn't
cute.
look like a kid.
No.
She doesn't look like a child. I mean, you know what I
But
mean.
people kind of seemed like they matured a little faster. I think then. Did you notice that? They
Yeah, but remember we were
they
talking.
got old fast. And
We
they
were
seemed
talking
very-
about that like on another show. There's actually a really good. I can't remember what the name of the channel was now, but I saw a really good YouTube video a couple weeks ago about why people perceive that people looked older, like back in the old days. Because remember, it's like I'd always like look at my parents' yearbooks, and I'd look at like the graduating seniors, and I'd be like, "Holy crap, they all look like they're 35." You know what I mean? But I don't know if it's necessarily just because I think partially it's to do with their health choices.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, you know, they went out in the sun more, they smoked more, they drank more, you know, they weren't as aware of health.
Terrible diets.
Yeah, like shit
Terrible
like that.
diet.
So I'm sure that contributed.
Yeah.
But I think the other part of it is probably like hairstyles, clothing, shit like that. He was making the argument that some of it might be that we associate certain types of clothing with people of certain ages. So even if we see people that are younger wearing these particular clothing that we've associated with older people, they're going to come across as older to us, which like that made a lot of sense to me actually.
Maybe.
He wasn't saying that was the only thing. He said, yeah, obviously like people's health choices back then was like a big factor also. But I generally think people look much younger nowadays than they did back then.
Most of them smoked, especially the men. Their diet, when you looked at their fucking food triangle that they had, was exact opposite what you mostly needed. They always made that damn food triangle fit what they had at the time. So it was mostly grains and cereals.
Eat
and
all the bread. We've
And
got
then
lots of bread just laying around.
Yeah, and then there's a little slab of vegetables and a little slab of meat, because that's what they had. So what you're talking about is high carb, fairly low protein. That's not a good diet, you know. Fucking not real good for cellular regeneration, you know, cellular growth. You throw all that vegan fucking bullshit, vegetarian bullshit you want at me. Go talk to those North Koreans, ones that have never eaten meat. They're fucking 6-7 inches shorter than a South Korean, all right, and they don't live that long, and they look pretty damn rough for their age. You know, no. Low protein and no protein is very bad for you. That's why there aren't any fucking real. Nah, I don't go ahead.
Well, the thing is, I mean, you don't necessarily have to eat meat to get protein because there's protein in lots of food. But
Animal protein is special though. You evolved to eat it. It's better for you. Okay, go ahead.
John Smith said life was tough back then. Steve McQueen looked 40 in his 20s.
Yeah.
He did. A lot of actors did.
Yeah.
He looked old in The Blob. I mean, I know he was older. He was supposed to be playing a high school student, which obviously, no. But I don't think he was as old as he looked in that movie. Like, we reviewed The Blob, like the original one, not too long ago. And I was watching it again. It's kind of like a joke from all those movies from the 50s and everything like that, like how fucking old like all the teenagers looked in there. But to be fair, like most of those actors were probably only in their 20s, which is about the same as what they would do nowadays. Like they would have actors that were in their 20s, like early to mid 20s, like playing teenagers in high school or whatever. But back then they all were in their 20s, but they looked like they were like 35 years old.
There was
like
no teenage culture really.
Not until the 50s.
Not until 50s, yeah.
Not
No real
really.
teenage 50s. I mean, they all dressed like adults. They dressed like adults from children, almost. There was children clothes, and then immediately became adult at like fucking 10, you know. So that's part of it.
Well, yeah, I think that was why there was such a big cultural shift, like in the 50s, because that was the first time that like teenage culture had been distinct from the adult culture.
You can't really have teenage culture until you have a middle class. That's really
Yeah.
hard to do. You have to have leisure time, middle class, kids in schools. They have to be in a safe enough environment where they're not out there working all the time and they can play and fucking be kids, you know, and then they'll develop a teenager culture. That's what, you know, you see that same thing in other countries, other cultures.
Yeah, John Smith said the 3-pack-a-day smoking habit probably put a few years on a chap back then. Yeah, I mean, they smoked like chimneys. They didn't have a great diet. They didn't.
None of those dudes dead by 40.
they drank more than
Yeah.
they should. I mean, I'm not going to get too much into that because I drink a lot too. But it's just kind of like, I mean, they were drinking
drank
a lot like
more. They drank
every day.
Yeah.
And, it's not like they were out like, running around the block or, running on the treadmill or anything, or going to the gym or anything like that.
No.
They weren't doing any of that.
Their diets weren't that good.
And they didn't have sunblock
No.
either.
Yeah, but I don't think that mattered in most of the country, depending on where they lived. Because, up north, they don't get they get in summertime they get a lot, but it's not the same as down south. And another thing is if you looked at the statistics, a lot of them died behind the wheel.
Yeah.
There were car accidents were fucking. Those cars were dangerous. They didn't survive fucking impacts well. They killed you if you hit anything because they didn't crumple at all. They were driving drunk constantly. The cars weighed a lot. They didn't stop very well.
They didn't have any like safety.
No.
They didn't have like fucking airbags or nothing like that.
So mortality was high, and they were lucky to make it to 40. Until later, once the fucking 50s and once the 60s rolled around, mortality's improved quite a bit. Mortality rates.
Well, people started to get more aware of
that you could die.
Things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like things you could do to like extend your lifespan.
Yeah.
El Padrino said, "Is that Spock in the background?" Yes, it's Mirror Universe.
It's
Spock.
Mirror Universe Spock. That's evil Spock. Well,
So
he wasn't evil. He was just Mirror.
Yeah, he's Mirror Universe.
Yeah.
I thought it was a stand-up poster of Billy D. Williams, Colt 45. That would be rad if somebody could find something like that. We actually did a show. It was probably like a few months ago where we talked about that because we had some of that. We bought some Colt 45. We were like doing a taste test on one of our Friday night shows. Not bad,
that
actually.
shit universal, bro.
It's actually pretty good.
No, if anybody sends me Billy D, I'll put Billy D up there too.
We'll put him right
Rotate
next
him
to
out.
Spock.
Yeah, right next to Spock.
They can hang out together.
Yeah.
They can hang out together. But yeah, seriously. Okay, so yeah, we were talking about Judy Garland. So like all the stuff they gave her because they said she was fat, which is terrible. And so yeah, she just got addicted to the drug, and she never got over that. Really, she just stayed on that shit forever.
They
like
say
I said,
her fucking brains were jelly by the time she died.
Well, that does not surprise me. Like I said, she died. She was 3 years younger than me when she died. She was 47 years old, which is fucking crazy. And she
was on meth that whole fucking time.
I mean, like I said, I felt really so bad for her. We should probably do a whole show about her, as a matter of fact. Also, and like I said, I don't know if this is true or not, but she did actually make some allegations later on, and this is what we were talking about before, that like a lot of the Little People actors that were acting all crazy and everything, that some of them also maybe sexually harassed her as well. Like actually her husband said that they would like come up to her and like put their hands under her dress and like shit like that. And these are like older, they're in their 40s or whatever. So they're doing that because, at least according to her husband, Sid Luft, he said, well, they were little people. They thought they could get away with anything. So they would just like go around like sticking their hands up people's skirts and shit like that. Cause they're like, what? I'm little, I'm cute. It's like not, you know what I mean? I'm like, still not funny.
Adults do the same fucking, fucking regular sized people do the same thing. We got friends that are little people.
Well, I know that, but I'm just saying.
Big egos, bro.
I know that, but I'm just saying that's still fucked up. Don't go around sticking your hand under people's skirts. Jesus Christ.
Back in those days, you could do that.
I mean, well.
Back in those days, if you were friends with a girl, you could smack her on the ass.
Yeah, but she didn't like it. She just had to put up with it because there was nothing you could do about it. That was the difference. It's like if you talked about it, people were like, don't complain about it. It's like they didn't like it any better than people like it nowadays. But it's like you just couldn't say anything. What's that, poke? But yeah, so there was all that going on, and she wasn't a big fan of that. And as I said, also Shirley Temple, they wanted Shirley Temple originally, but they thought maybe that they didn't really love her singing voice. So that's so that's kind of why they didn't get her. But yeah, Judy Garland, they asked her to lose 12 pounds like before she did the film. So like I said, that was one of the reasons they kept like pumping her up with drugs. They encouraged her to start smoking. I don't know if she smoked before the movie, but they definitely said, because that was like a big thing back then too. It's like, oh well, and I think like a lot of cigarettes back in the old days, like their advertising campaigns would get that. It's like it's kind of like an appetite suppressant, right? So that was like one of the things that they touted as one of the health benefits of cigarettes. It's like, oh, if you get hungry, you can just like smoke a cigarette and it'll take your appetite away. So they encouraged her to start smoking. They actually did put a corset on her that like flattened her boobs, like I said, so she would look younger. Because like I said, she was, you know, older teenager. She was 17, and they wanted her to look like a child, which she obviously did not. And then too, I think initially they wanted her to be a blonde because they thought that was kind of like the original look of the character, but they thought maybe she'd look younger if her hair was darker. There was another story about this shoot too. Was there's kind of like, you know, one of the better known scenes in the movie where Dorothy actually like slaps the Cowardly Lion, like she kind of does his nose like that. And I guess she kept fucking up the takes because she kept like cracking up, and she couldn't finish the scene. And then so apparently, the director like came in and like hauled off and smacked her across the face because she kept messing up the shoot. So there was that, like grown man coming in and slapping a teenage girl. So there's that. Also, probably one of the most famous accidents that happened on the set of Wizard of Oz was that when the Wicked Witch of the West, when she's, you know, leaving Munchkin Land, like in the big plume of smoke or whatever, and there was kind of a thing where Margaret Hamilton would be like lowered down this trapdoor, right? So she would disappear. The whole, like the explosions and the smoke and everything, the pyrotechnics were set off too early. And the trapdoor also malfunctioned, like at the same time. So Margaret Hamilton, the actress playing the Wicked Witch of the West, her makeup and her broom and her hat caught fire. And her face and hands got like really, really burned, like really badly. So she's like all burned all over. And then like the medics had to run in. They had to take all the makeup because she was all green, like all over, right? And so they had to come in and like use alcohol to get all the makeup off. And that was like super painful too, because obviously she's burned all over and they're trying to take all this makeup off. And the makeup, like I said, they don't have this makeup. I don't even know what the fuck it was made out of, but it was, not only was it flammable, but it was also toxic, you know? So she accidentally, Margaret Hamilton actually swallowed some of it. And it made her like, it fucked her mouth all up. She couldn't eat for several days, and her skin was also dyed green because the makeup had like copper in it, which is, you know, toxic. You're not supposed to put it on your skin. So like I said, they didn't give a rat's ass about the fucking. So she like, her whole fucking face and hand caught on fire, and they're like trying to get fucking makeup off her with alcohol, and it's just like Jesus.
How long's
Christ.
the show been going on?
2 hours and 12 minutes.
Okay. Soon I'm gonna go down and start putting the chicken in the oven.
Okay, well, we still got a long way to go, though.
Yep. So we talked it all away, man. Show's 2 hours. How long is the show going to be? 5 hours?
Well, I don't know.
Okay.
Quit changing the subject.
I'm not changing
the
subject.
Mr. 88 said, yeah, there are pics of her with blonde hair as Dorothy. Yeah, I've seen those. John Smith said, advertising way back when. Smoke, it's good for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. El Padrino said, did someone actually hang themselves on the set of Wizard of Oz? No, that is an urban legend. But it's a pretty persistent one. But as far as I know, that didn't really happen. But yeah, it's a pretty popular urban legend. The thing about it too was that Margaret Hamilton, she got like horribly burned. Like I said, she had like the toxic makeup and everything. And then when she finally, because she was out for a while, and then like she had to come back to work, and they said, oh, by the way, we need you to film this Surrender Dorothy scene, you know, which is her flying on the broom where she like writes it in the sky. And that also had like some pyrotechnics and stuff, and Margaret Hamilton probably understandably was like, absolutely not, I'm not doing that. So you know, she's got a little trauma about that. So her stunt double, whose name was Betty Danko, she came in and took over. And it so happened that Betty Danko, the stunt double, when she was doing the shit, she got the same thing happen. Like the pyrotechnics also malfunctioned a little bit, and she also got burned and had to be hospitalized. So Margaret Hamilton was like, woo, dodged a bullet there. But you know what I mean? Somebody else got hurt on it too. So that's pretty shitty. So also, what happened here too? I think Ray Bolger, who he was initially, I believe he was initially hired to play the Tin Man, but he thought he wanted to be the Scarecrow. So they let him be the Scarecrow. So they gave the part of the Tin Man initially to Buddy Ebsen. But the silver makeup that they put on the Tin Man had aluminum powder in it. Again, very toxic. Now, Buddy Ebsen actually had a really, really bad allergic reaction to the aluminum powder. And he had to be hospitalized. Also, they had to put him in an oxygen tent and everything like that. The thing about it, though, was that I guess like a lot of the people that were working on the movie didn't know why Buddy Ebsen left the movie. Like they didn't really let it get around. It's like, oh, it was because of the silver makeup. Now, because of the way that the studio contracts were kind of around at the time, they actually gave the part, like after Buddy Ebsen got hurt and he left, they gave it to Jack Haley. They basically said, well, you have to take this role now. You're contractually obligated. And at that point, like they switched it. They're like, oh, well, maybe we should make this like an aluminum paste, which was maybe a little bit better than the powder. But Jack Haley still got an eye infection from it because, you know, like I said, they didn't really have any safeguards in play, like with any of this makeup or anything. And there was like all kind of toxic fucking shit in it. So yeah. Also, and I think somebody brought this up earlier, but you know the scene with the poppies, like where the witch puts them all to sleep and they fall asleep, like out in the poppy field, like the Dorothy and Toto and the Cowardly Lion and them. And then they get woken up by snow falling on them. That snow was made of asbestos, which, you know, I kind of feel like, you know how they used to have, probably back, I think from the 1930s to like the 1940s, you had like that kind of spray snow or fake snow. That was usually made of asbestos, like during about that 20-year period before they really knew how harmful it was. So people like would put it in their houses, like for Christmas decorations and shit like that. And they used it in movies a lot, including in The Wizard of Oz, because it wasn't until much later that they figured out that it was a carcinogen. So, you know, so that happened as well. You had like fucking cancer snow falling on them. Also, Bert Lahr, who played the Cowardly Lion, his costume was made of real lion pelts. So this costume reportedly weighed about 90 pounds and smelled really, really bad. Like, especially because, you know, you have an actor in there who's like sweating his ass off every day, like on a movie set. And, you know, so, and basically like it took like a really long time, like to put all this stuff on as well. All the makeup and costuming took so long, matter of fact, that all three actors, like the Scarecrow, the Cowardly Lion, and the Tin Man, they weren't allowed to take off their costumes or makeup like all day. So it would be like hours and hours and hours. I believe like, you know, the guy that played the Tin Man, he couldn't even sit. Like if he wanted to rest, like they had to kind of lean him against a board kind of thing. So, so there was that too. Also the Scarecrow mask that Ray Bolger had to wear, like left, kind of like weird imprints or like scars on his face that were reportedly like left there for a year. So there's that. Also, Toto, the dog, was played by a little Cairn Terrier, a female dog actually, whose name was Terry. Now, during the filming, the dog got stepped on by one of the Winkies, and poor little Terry like had her little paw broken during the production. So she actually had to be replaced with another dog for like a month until she got better. And I think somebody mentioned this earlier too, but the story goes that the owner of Toto like got more money for the movie than most of the little people that played the Munchkins. So there was that too. Also, there was another thing too about it, because this was shot in Technicolor and was one of the first movies to have that. You kind of had to, the set had to be like super, super bright. So you had to have like a lot of lights on to get that real vivid color. And because of all the lighting, they didn't have, like nowadays they have kind of stuff that will cool the lights off and everything, but back then they didn't have that. So on the set, the temperatures would be like way like above 100 degrees And like I said, you have like these people in these very, very heavy, very, very hot costumes. So, you know, there was some problems there as well with people like fucking fainting and shit like that, because you didn't just have, you know, Bert Lahr as the Cowardly Lion and stuff, but you had like all the Winkies, and you had like the guys that were playing like the winged monkeys and stuff like that, who had these full-on fur bodysuits, and they're like in these fucking, you know, and they're spending hours and hours like on this set where it's just kind of like 120 degrees, and a lot of them were like fucking passing out and getting heat stroke and shit like that. All right, so let's talk about, I don't know where Tom went to. He's been gone for like a long time, but maybe he went downstairs to like fucking start some. What's up, Pookie? What are you talking about? Pookie's talking over there. She probably wants me to open the closet door. Murder Hornet said, I'm going to make a surprise visit to Tom's house. Well, it's not a surprise now. You just told us. Pat says, good God, were they trying to kill the entire main cast of Wizard of Oz? It kind of seems like that, because like I said, I think this kind of shit was like really endemic back then, because I really don't think they gave much of a shit like about the actors. I think, like Tom said, I think they've thought of them as just very interchangeable, and it's like, hey, there's other ones out there, you know, if you don't want to do something. So everybody just kind of did it, and they didn't really have, like I said, they weren't unionized at that time. They didn't really have any protections, and they didn't really seem to, you know, they didn't seem to have any concept of like, hey, this makeup has like, you know, has toxic chemicals in it and can cause all kind of stuff. They were basically like, look, we just want to get this movie out and make some money off it, so just quit your crying. It was just kind of like that, you know? It just really did seem like that. I think some of the crew members, like from what I could determine, I think some of the like people that did like worked behind the scenes, like, you know, painting sets or like doing lights or whatever, I think they were unionized, so they had like a modicum more protection than the actors did. But actors were just seen as, like I said, very interchangeable, so they really didn't seem to care like what they put them through. So there's a lot of stories like that, like from the golden era of Hollywood, you know what I mean? Okay, so let's talk about the 1996 Island of Dr. Moreau. Now, as I said, there are so many like fucking crazy stories about the making of this shit that there's a whole documentary about it. I think it's called Lost Souls. It might still be on Shudder. It was for a long time. I don't know if it's still on there or not. But so, like I said, okay, so the Island of Dr. Moreau has been made into a movie like several times. This was the 1996 version that we're talking about that was like the most famous shit show. So the guy that was being like the main headliner in it was Val Kilmer. Now, he had just been in Tombstone from 1993. He played Doc Holliday. Actually, we just talked about Tombstone a couple weeks ago. And I will say, like, Val Kilmer, I've heard a lot of stories about like what he's like behind the scenes, but he was actually great in Tombstone. He was a great Doc Holliday. I think he'd also been in Batman Forever too. So he's in it. He was supposed to be like the headliner, and also they got Marlon Brando, who's going to be Dr. Moreau, obviously. They were kind of wanting him to be, they wanted him to do like a Colonel Kurtz type of situation, like from Apocalypse Now. That's kind of what they were hoping for, I guess. So they also had Fairuza Balk was in this. David Thewlis, who I love, he's like a British actor. He was in it as well. And they just thought, well, this is going to be great. It's a great cast. It's a great story. It's been, adapted to film. It's an H.G. Wells story. It's been adapted to film several times before. It's always like very successful. So, it's going to be a good time. But not so much. Like, even before they had filmed a fucking frame of this movie, there were problems. Now, initially, the part that Val Kilmer, like the main part, was supposed to be Bruce Willis. But the thing that happened, like back in the 90s, Bruce Willis was married to Demi Moore, and there was like a big, huge, I don't know how many of you guys are old enough to remember this, but there was like a huge scandal about the divorce, and it was like this big fucking deal. It was on all the tabloids and everything like that. So Bruce Willis was having some personal issues, and he didn't want to do the movie. So they basically recast Val Kilmer in that role. Now, Val Kilmer, when he came on, he said, well, I'm only going to shoot 60% of what Bruce Willis was supposed to shoot. Like, for whatever reason. That's kind of what he came at it from. So basically they're like, well, okay, well, we can't do that because you're kind of like the main role. So we're going to have to put you into a smaller role. Like, he was supposed to play Edward Prendrick, who I think is like the main character's name. And they're like, well, you can't just shoot 60% of that, so we'll put you in a smaller role. So they transferred him to like another role, which was Mr. Montgomery, who was the assistant to Dr. Moreau. Now, James Woods, who initially was supposed to play Mr. Montgomery, he ended up getting forced out of the movie because that was his part, and now Val Kilmer, now they were pushing him into that, so James Woods was like, okay, well, fuck it. Now, what ends up happening with this, in the original source novel, Prendrick, who was kind of like the main character, he's like a sailor, and he washes ashore, and he's the one that like sees all the crazy shit that's going on the island, right? Now, what they decided to do, though, was that they were going to make that character like a UN inspector, like instead of a sailor, which for reasons I don't really know. And everyone was like, okay, that seems like a dumb idea, whatever. So as I said, Richard Stanley was the original director on this. And very famously, this was the last movie he did for a very, very long time because of the shit show that this became. He was just kind of like, yeah, he just kind of went a little bit crazy. So the thing that's kind of sad about this too is that Richard Stanley had been wanting to make the Island of Dr. Moreau for like a really, really long time. I mean, he had just spent like years working on it and thinking about it, and it's like he had actually like spent a lot of his own money like to get a studio to like talk to him about it. And it was kind of like his biggest movie. It was going to be his biggest movie that he'd ever made. So he got like finally New Line Cinema, who wasn't like a huge, they weren't like a huge studio or anything like that. But it's like they were the ones that were going to like put the money up. And so he finally got them to do it and, to take a chance on him and whatnot. But there were kind of like, even from the beginning, there were kind of rumors swirling around that he was going to be replaced possibly by Roman Polanski, who was a lot more experienced, obviously. So what Richard Stanley did, he said, well, I'm going to go meet with Marlon Brando because I figured Marlon Brando is like a really big star. And if I can get him on my side, then maybe I'll have more pull like with the studio because they won't want to like piss Marlon Brando off, right? So because, he wasn't as famous, like Richard Stanley wasn't as famous. So he needed somebody more famous like on his side to kind of like go to bat for him, right? So Richard Stanley goes to a meeting with Marlon Brando at Marlon Brando's house in the Hollywood Hills. And then like there's this whole story. I don't know how true this is, but there's a whole story that Richard Stanley, who was actually, I believe he was a Wiccan at the time that this was going on, he actually brought a warlock, like a British warlock, to help him like convince Marlon Brando to like come over to his side and like, get on board with him to like to make this movie. So somehow, like, all of this worked. Marlon Brando is like, okay, fine, I'm going to go to bat for you. So the studio is like, okay, fine, we won't replace you. Whether or not they were going to, really, I'm not really sure. But they said, okay, you can go ahead and do it. So Richard Stanley is basically like, okay, no, I got Marlon Brando. We're going to make this movie. It's going to be awesome. Now, one day before the shoot was going to start, Marlon Brando's daughter committed suicide. Obviously, Marlon Brando is not going to be, in any frame of mind to be filming a movie after that happened. So there was, automatically like a really big delay, like while they waited for him to like get through his grief or whatever. Also, there was basically like Richard Stanley was like, okay, well, we can shoot around him for like a little while. Like they kind of shot all the stuff that he wasn't in. So they started doing that. But a couple days later, a hurricane hit the set and basically swept most of it out into the ocean. So there was that too. So they had to stop again for like a very long time. Richard Stanley at this point, as well as the executives at New Line Cinema, are starting to think maybe this project is cursed and maybe we should just like cut our fucking losses. But they kind of like soldiered on with it, right? So they did finally manage to like start shooting again. But then the director and Val Kilmer started getting into confrontations. Val Kilmer on the set of this has been called a prep school bully. That's a quote that gets thrown around a lot. And Richard Stanley, I mean, for those of you know, he's kind of like famous for being a very unorthodox kind of director. He's not a stickler. He's just kind of like, he's a very, what's the word that I'm looking for? He's just kind of more instinctive. You know what I mean? He's not real worried about like, you know, doing things. He's like, we're just going to go with the flow kind of thing. Val Kilmer was not having that because Val Kilmer really wanted to do things in a particular way, like in his own method kind of way. And he was really not jiving with this whole like more laid back kind of thing that Richard Stanley was doing. So they got in a lot of, altercations. So, so that caused a lot of, rewrites and shooting delays, and like Val Kilmer would have some tantrums and shit like that. And because their relationship had so soured that, a lot of the crew, obviously, they have to come to work every day and like get into this like kind of toxic environment. And that was like not fun for anybody either. And this other actor named Rob Moreau, he came in to play the Prendrick character who Val Kilmer had first supposed to be playing, but obviously Val Kilmer said, I'm only doing 60%, so they gave him the smaller role. So Rob Moreau comes in, and he basically thought that the whole like situation on the set was so shitty that he didn't even want to be on this fucking movie anymore. So he called his agent and is like, please get me the fuck out of this contract. I don't even want to like fucking do it because it's awful. So his agent was successful in getting him to do that. So he was only there for like 3 days, and he was just like, fuck that, I'm out. So basically the studio are kind of like, okay, this is really, really going sideways. They'd already given up like $40 million, like the budget, and they've only shot like a few days worth of footage, and everybody is just being like a fucking baby about everything, and everybody's fighting. And part of the set had to be rebuilt because of the hurricane and all this other kind of shit. So basically they come in and they took everything that Richard Stanley had shot so far and they threw it all out, everything that he had shot. And then they sent him a fax and fired him. They said, we're just going to start all over from frame one. And at this point, Richard Stanley, he was basically like, he pretty much had a nervous breakdown. He started trying to like sabotage the set. Like he would go to, he would basically go and anything that he had to do with the movie, like storyboards or anything like that, he just like put them through the shredder and he fucked it all up. Anything that he had like left over from the production, he just destroyed it. And he also got a bunch of people that either were extras on the film or actually were kind of like locals that lived in the area. He actually got a bunch of them to go and like fucking sabotage the set. You know what I mean? Like, and he got some of the like Aboriginal people that from around where they were filming. He's like, I want you to like go into the set and like put some like weird like stone arrangement, like some Blair Witch kind of shit. So everybody like, this was pre Blair Witch, but you know what I'm talking about. So he would put like all these weird stones on the ground so it would freak everyone out. So they would think that like they were like putting a hex on him and shit. So he told him to do that kind of shit. Also, after all of that, he ended up wandering off into basically like the rainforest in Australia or whatever and just lived there by himself like for a while. Out there like smoking pot or whatever because he just couldn't deal with it anymore. But yeah, so he would basically. Also, the story goes that after he did that, he came back onto the set of Island of Dr. Moreau, and like him and like some of the other like locals from the area, like they snuck onto the set and pretended they were extras. So the story goes that you can actually still see him in the background of some of the scenes because they didn't catch him. So there was that. Like he was very, very mad that his kind of passion project had been taken away from him. So the director that they gave the movie to was John Frankenheimer. Who also did Prophecy, actually, the one about the mutated bear creature. I
like the movie.
I like Prophecy too.
Movie, yeah.
But yeah, that's the same thing. He's done other things too, but that was
Alien came in a little bit later and blew it away, but it was Prophecy was all over Fangoria magazine for a while. Good movie for its time.
We did a review of it not too long ago.
And they left the two-legged fish hanging. Remember that?
They did.
They showed a scene where a fucking two-legged little fish in their laboratory ran by, and you're like, well, what the fuck was that? They just like, well, you think.
I think we talked about that, like when we did, because I was like, what happened with that? I was curious about the like little fish with feet
it's like
on
that tall. They ran across it, and they were like,
I was like, they never did revisit that.
No
situation.
There was a sequel right there of what happened. You know what I mean? You could have made a sequel based on that.
I
like
kind of
what happens when that fish grows up?
Yeah, because I'm kind of curious about that.
What happens when that fish grows up? And it spawns.
He becomes the fish man from The Shape of Water. And has sex with the janitor.
Or the creature. Creature from the Black Lagoon.
El Padroni said, I thought you meant The Prophecy. No, that was a different movie. The one with Christopher Walken, that's not the one we're talking about. We're talking about the one that's just called Prophecy. It's from 1978. It's like an mutated. It's like an eco horror.
Mutated bear got a hold of some mercury, and no, it wasn't just mercury. It was some other stuff.
It was mostly mercury.
Mostly mercury and some kind of biotech that got mixed in with it, and the fucking bear.
Yeah.
A pregnant bear got a hold of it, and then this mutated bear popped out of the mama, and
What's the matter, Pokey?
And ran around killing everything. Scared the shit out of me when I was a kid because I was going up to Sequoia National and Redwood Forest with Lois all the time, my Aunt Lois. And there's a scene where the kid's in a sleeping bag trying to jump away, and that bear comes and goes boom, and the sleeping bag goes flying and hits a tree and explodes at a fucking cloud of fucking down.
That scene will never not make me laugh. It is so fucking funny.
I saw that shit and I was like, oh, that's it, man.
You know what's crazy? Like when at Mannequins, he has, that's the club we go to in case you're new. He has like a kind of a video that he shows that has like all these just little clips from horror movies, and it has that part in there, and it's like at that, it always makes me laugh every single time. That's fucking hilarious.
Sleeping bag goes flying. You could tell there's like somebody in it or a thing man-shaped, and it hits a tree so hard that it blows up into fucking feathers. Boom! Because
it's so awesome.
It was.
There's a kid in it.
Was that 70s? Yeah, it was a little kid in it. Because that's 70s, you know what I mean? And so the sleeping bag
so funny.
had feathers in it, you know,
it's so
fucking
funny.
Boom, like that. And it was like a little kid, and the little kid was probably like my age. You know what I mean? And I was like, oh, man.
It's so great.
That movie stooped to that level where they're killing children at my age. Oh, man, I'm not safe now.
They didn't give a fuck.
Not safe now.
They kill children.
And I was going to Redwood Forest up in California all the time, you know, fucking scaring the shit out of me. Never saw a bear there. I see bear here all the time, walking into the fucking garage, looking at me. Hey, what's up? It's a sweet little black bear, you know.
Going through your garbage and
whatnot. Yeah. Hey, how you doing? Don't forget about shit on the ground right here. I'm with shit right here. Came in one time. There was
at least they ask.
Yeah, fucking. We came in one night from the club. This is at the other place. It was even closer to fucking the city. I was going up to the fucking driveway, and there was a bear fucking sitting on its ass with its hands like this.
Like in front of the garage.
Just sitting there in front of the garage watching me pull in, and he goes, and he was huge, bigger than a man.
Yeah, it was a big
And he just like, oh shit, he rolls over and fucking just walks off on foot. Oh shit. He must have been a fucking 400-pound black bear.
He's like,
standing up on his, standing up on his back legs. It must have been about 6 feet tall, probably.
I mean, that's fucked up.
Oh, you get in trouble. Come down here.
What are you doing?
Get down. Good girl. She knows what get down is and stop and no.
She went up there and she's fucking with my phone because my phone's on the charger over there. Yeah. So she's like over there fucking with it.
She'll climb up on my chest. I'm asleep and then I'll be what? And I'll look down at her face. It's like right here. Hey, Daddy.
What you doing?
Are you awake?
You're like,
Are you awake? Yeah, I'm awake.
Now
you woke me up. I'm scared. You're scared? Yeah, I'm scared. It's gonna be okay. Yeah.
Well, she woke me up other morning, like jumping up on the side on the little nightstand
Yeah.
and throwing something off of it. She was mad because her little treat plate was empty.
Yeah. She gets scared, man. If it's too quiet, she gets scared. She checks on you. Okay. Yeah.
You guys still alive?
I'm scared. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, poor baby. All right, so.
Oh, by the way, chicken is in.
Okay.
And I made cheese sauce for macaroni.
Well, damn.
So we have macaroni and cheese.
That sounds really good.
Yeah, made it out of the damn Nido butter and that cheese powder. It's good too. That 4 cheese powder. It's good. I tried it. Put the macaroni in it and everything.
I'm sure.
I had leftover macaroni I cooked earlier today.
Oh, is that the bow tie pasta?
No, it's,
it's
elbows.
Oh,
because
okay.
I'm out of bow tie.
Oh, okay.
So I cooked some elbows for my serving, and I had some left over, and I made macaroni out of macaroni and cheese.
Well, shit, yeah.
It's good. Yeah, it's real good.
So yeah, we got distracted talking about John Frankenheimer.
We're gonna have barbecue chicken and macaroni and cheese, barbecue chicken thigh. It's in there at like $2.50, going about an hour or so, and I'll go check it, and I might turn it up towards the end. It's just it's thawed. I'm just kind of slow cooking it, marinated and everything.
Yummy.
Real good.
Yeah, so we got distracted talking about John Frankenheimer. So John Frankenheimer comes on to do Island of Dr. Moreau. He didn't really want to do it. Like, they asked him, and he's like, I don't love it. I don't love it. But they said, hey, we'll give you a contract for a 3-picture deal, and we'll give you, like, a fuck ton of money. I don't know how much it was, but it was a lot. And he's like, all right. So he decided to do it. I mean, he was kind of like more of a safe bet, I guess. Because Richard Stanley, like I said, is a little bit, you know, he's an awesome director, but he's, like, a little bit weird. He's, like, a little bit of quirky. You know what I mean? So they figured this guy would kind of like come in and right the ship, I suppose. Problem was, John Frankenheimer comes in. Val Kilmer kind of started to behave, but then Marlon Brando started acting like a douche. So he would basically come in and just started like acting like a total prima donna. He's like, I'm just going to be in my really nice trailer for hours and hours. You know, and he's like, oh, and by the way, I'm not even going to bother reading the script or memorizing my lines or anything like that. I'm just going to, like, sit here in my thing. And it's like, yeah, call me if you want, but I'm not going to bother, like, putting in any effort because he just decided he was going to be that way, I suppose. So, basically, John Frankenheimer was like, okay, well, can somebody, like, read Marlon Brando his lines, like, through, like, an earpiece, like, while they're shooting the movie? Because he couldn't be bothered to, like, memorize the shit. So yeah. Also, Marlon Brando wanted more the script rewritten because he became like he got like established this really close friendship with this other guy that was in the movie, Nelson De La Rosa, who was at the time was like the world's smallest man. So he was like a little person. And for some reason Marlon Brando like really got into this little dude. So he wanted his part to be bigger. So he told him to like rewrite the script like to make his part bigger. So there was that. John Frankenheimer was like, okay, fine. We'll do some of that, but he wouldn't do all of it. Also, Marlon Brando had the idea that he wanted it to turn into a dolphin at the end of the movie. And John Frankenheimer said, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Although, how fucking funny would that have been?
What was the name of this movie again?
Island of Dr. Moreau.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah.
Island
Okay. Yes, you could turn into a damn dolphin in that.
Yeah, I mean, in the context of the story,
Yeah,
it's not as crazy as it sounds, just like out of the blue like that.
Because they were
but
turning
still,
into animals. They were turning into animals as they went.
He'd be a
But
pretty
that's like
chubby dolphin.
I actually liked that movie. Okay. Some people were back on that movie. I liked Color Out of Space too.
Yeah, I mean, and well, that's the thing. Like Richard Stanley, he
Nicolas Cage, man.
He was
Cage
so
is
soured
fucking,
from making this movie that he basically retired from Hollywood. He didn't come back. I don't think he made another movie until Color Out of Space.
Yep, I got Color Out of Space. I had to get Island of Dr. Moreau.
I would be curious to see it again because I don't remember that much about it. Like I don't remember it being great, but I also don't remember it being like laughably terrible.
It's had Fairuza in it, and she was still real cute.
Yeah.
Fairuza was standing behind me in line getting coffee one time. I didn't even know it. Jenny had to tell me afterwards.
Yeah, we were at that horror convention.
Yeah.
Because I saw her, like, I immediately recognized her. She didn't really look
I didn't
that
recognize
different.
her.
That was like a couple of years
I was
back.
like, man, she goes, yeah, she was standing right behind you in line.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know.
Yeah, she didn't look all that much different.
To me, she did. I just expected her to look like something out of the movie.
Well, no.
But that's not what she looked like.
No, she's not going to look like that.
Yeah.
Danny Rowling said 0 CGI whatsoever in the Island of Dr. Moreau, which is awesome, and great makeup and costumes, unlike the original. Yeah, maybe that's something we should look into doing, see all the versions of it. That might be an interesting comparison.
I kind of it reminded me at the time of a higher tech version of not Wolfen, The Howling, kind of like The Howling 1.
Yeah,
that's kind of what it reminded me of. Because there were some transformation scenes in it and stuff. It wasn't just werewolves though. It was people turning into panthers and cats and monkeys. It was pretty cool.
Now I kind of want to watch it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I kind of want to watch it.
Marlon Brando was just being crazy as shit. I mean, he was just being crazy in the shit. Okay, because he's being himself, basically. You could tell. And he had a little miniature person that was only this tall.
That's who I was talking about.
Yeah, and he kept jacking off. And he's like, stop it. Don't do that. Marlon Brando, don't do it. He started jerking off. And he's like, stop it.
Okay, see, now I have to see. I don't remember that.
You don't remember that? Yeah.
No, like I said, I was probably like a kid. But I wasn't a kid, but
he had a little pet human that was about that big.
That's the actor that I was just talking about.
Yeah, he couldn't stop jerking off.
Sounds like a personal problem.
Well, it was because it was so small. It was a person that was so small. It was like a monkey.
Yeah.
So it had kind of like a monkey's intelligence, I guess.
Mr. 88
wearing clothes, though.
Said Marlon Brando also wanted a talking suitcase as a part of his character in Superman. And that was a long time before this.
Marlon Brando wanted that? Well, that might have made sense in the context.
What are you talking about? No, it wouldn't have.
Marlon Brando played Superman's dad.
Yeah.
Back on the alien planet.
Yeah.
He might have had what they're talking about, a talking suitcase. They're talking about a laptop.
Right, but in the context of 1978 or whenever that movie came out, I don't think that would have worked out so good.
Yeah, Marlon Brando's being smart, man. He's saying, oh no, fucking Jarrell would have had a fucking a laptop computer is what they're talking about. A little talking briefcase. You open it up and it talks, and then you do stuff with it. And supercomputers. What he's talking about.
I still think in 1978 that would have looked really, really dumb.
Depends on how they did it.
The cool thing about the original Superman is that it's always better if you're going to do like a sci-fi movie. Like, don't try to take technology of nowadays and just like extrapolate like 5 or 10 years in the future. Make it like completely different.
Well, that's why they did the crystals.
So yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's why I think the crystals were a good idea, because that's not tied to any particular era. It doesn't look particularly dated. It looks like completely alien technology. And I think that's really what you need to strive for when you're doing sci-fi, because
it holds up. You see
because it holds up if you see it like many years later. If you just try to do, something, it's like, it's like you see something from, that was made in, I don't know, like the 70s, and they're like, ooh, in the future of 1985, and everybody still has like really shitty like fucking wireframe computer technology, and it's like, obviously they had better shit than that. Like in whatever year it was. Oh, it's the year 2000. I'm like, yeah, we had better shit than that in 2000.
Those first two Superman with Christopher Reeves were fucking phenomenal. Richard Donner, and the Donner cut, the second one's good too. I got that one also, and it's a little bit different than the theatrical release. But no, it's a good idea that the crystal technology that allowed Superman to talk to his dad, and and his dad explains early on that all my knowledge, all my mind has been stored on these crystals. You know what I mean? So you can access me basically, and you couldn't do that with any known technology, of the 1970s. So you had to say it had to be magic basically. So magic crystals. Magic crystals had stored his soul, so you could interact with him in live time. That's great. That way you can have fucking Brando showed up. And in the Donner cut, Brando's in it. He does a couple other scenes in the Donner cut. I don't think that was in the normal cut of Superman 2. I think they didn't want to pay his fee, so I think they cut him out.
Yeah.
Because he wanted too much, I think. But if you get the Donner cut, he's in it. They're like, fuck Brando, we're going to put his ass back in that shit. He's dead. You know, fucking.
Well, yeah. Now what's he gonna do?
Now he can't. Yeah.
Well, his
Now what's he
estate
gonna
can
do?
still sue, I guess.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, they probably reached an agreement.
Zach says, apparently Brando and the little dude were the inspiration for Dr. Evil and Mini-Me in Austin Powers.
Probably right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Makes sense.
And Mr. 88 said, no, an actual talking suitcase.
An actual talking. I'd have to see what it is he's talking about.
So not like just like
Not
a
a
laptop.
laptop.
Just like an actual talking suitcase.
How would Superman's dad have that?
Well, that's what we
On
were talking.
Krypton.
That's what we're said. That's what we're talking
On
about.
Krypton.
That's a dumb fucking idea.
There's nothing like a suitcase there.
Also, what the fuck? Like, I don't know, man. Marlon Brando, what kind of fucking drugs was he on? It's like, oh, I'm gonna turn into a dolphin at the end of this movie. Fuck off with that. Fuck off with. Pat says,
It's almost like the nuclear football that the president carries around.
Yeah, okay. Pat says, unfortunately, Color Out of Space didn't do so well, and Richard Stanley got soured on making movies yet again. At least that's what I heard. Which is a shame, because I really liked Color Out of Space.
Yeah, it's not a bad movie.
I didn't like it as much as Mandy.
Yeah.
Like, I know that's not the same director, but it still had Nicolas Cage in it,
Yeah.
and it was kind of, you know, Lovecrafty.
It's a decent movie.
El Pedrino said, I still have an original Garbage Pail Kid sticker. I think I have one somewhere, too, matter of fact, but I can't remember which one it is. Zach says, Blade Runner being set in 2019. I wish the 2020s had that kind of tech, but then again, we're getting kind of scary close to it in some ways. Yeah.
But you had to read the book, and then the movie makes a lot more sense. Because in the book, it's after a nuclear holocaust, and a lot of the technology that they were using was recycled. So it was 2019, but they had stuff from the 1980s and the 1990s strapped onto cars and merged together to make a new product. You know, they were recycling stuff, which is why it looks so fucking weird, kind of steampunky looking in the movie. It wasn't new products, really. And only losers were on Earth. Everybody else had left in the book.
Yeah. Okay. You're just like sitting there blinking.
That's all I got to say about it.
Oh, okay. I didn't know.
You didn't read the book?
A long time ago. I don't
Yeah.
remember that much about it.
No. Deckard and everybody else and the replicants and everything, they were just... Those are the people that couldn't pass the physical. They had to be stuck on Earth. Everybody else had gone to the colonies. And it is the same universe as Alien. It's the same universe, basically. According to Ridley Scott. It's the same future. His future is always the same future.
Pat says at this point, Marlon Brando wasn't so much an actor, more like an extortionist. And then Zach said, I read an article about Brando's apparent eating disorder and was actually really depressing, and I felt really bad for him. So, yeah, there's that.
I got to clean that up, though, what I just said, because that sounds awful funny. The book was written by dicks. So, a lot of stuff out of the book, Ridley Scott had nothing to do with that. But when Ridley Scott made the Blade Runner movie and Alien 1, it's the same future in those two movies. Which is, and it's not quite like the book, but, you know, that kind of cleaned that up.
El Padrini said Blade Runner was Harrison Ford a robot? I always heard that.
Yeah, he was a replicant.
I mean, there's still a debate about that, but
He was.
I'm pretty sure he was.
Yeah, Ridley Scott said he was a replicant.
I've seen arguments on both sides, but I think
there's
he
just...
was.
How else would have Gaff known about that fucking unicorn? The unicorn, if it's got the unicorn scene in it, and the scene where he walks away from Rachel and says somebody would, and you see that his eyes are glowing in the fucking mirror reflection, he's a replicant. The real Blade Runner, he replaced the Blade Runner that got shot at the Tyrell Corporation doing the Void Comp test on fucking Leon. They shot that guy, so they made another Blade Runner, a fucking replicant Blade Runner, to go after him. A different Nexus model. His life started on the park bench in the beginning of the movie. That's where that Deckard's, and he's a replica of another Blade Runner that got killed. So he goes back into the. They sent him back into the apartment of another dead Blade Runner. But no, he's a replicant.
Yeah, Pat said it depends who you ask. Ridley Scott insisted that he was. Everyone else says he wasn't.
They don't want,
Murder Hornet said the unicorn at the end. They deleted the scene that explains that.
Yeah, if the movie's got the unicorn in it, he's a replicant, and that's how he has a child with Rachel later on in the second Blade Runner movie.
In 2049.
Yeah, where they were two special replicant models, Rachel and a fucking, what was his name? A fucking not Derek. What was his name? The fucking the name of the Blade Runner that Harrison Ford was playing. What was his name?
Deckard.
Deckard. Yeah. They had a child together, a replicant child, which supposedly wasn't supposed to happen, but the corporations that were involved in it wanted that to happen. They wanted replacements for human, real ones, the ones that could have sex and reproduce so they could take over. That was eventually how that went. But no, he's a replicant. Yeah. How else do you hang from the side of a building with two broken fingers? You know, he did a bunch of stuff in there that, in that final scene, that a human couldn't have done. Jumping from one building to the next.
El Padrino said, "What version of the movie is better in your opinion?" Of all of the versions of Blade Runner.
That last one, I think, was called the director's cut. I think.
Yeah, I get them all confused.
Yeah,
I've seen all the versions.
Seen them all, but I get them confused.
But I can't remember which
that
one
final one that has all the restored scenes. Not all the scenes are restored. There's a scene, you can find it on YouTube, where Deckard goes to the hospital and talks to the Blade Runner that Leon shot in the beginning of the movie, and they got him in a damn plastic tube, and they're talking to each other. He's paralyzed. He can breathe. That's it. And he's watching things on a screen. It's kind of like the little hibernation capsule that Wayland was in Prometheus. It's kind of like that. And he's talking to him about the replicants, and asked him if he ever had sex with a replicant. And fucking that guy told him what it was like to have sex with a replicant before you killed her. That kind of stuff. It was weird shit. And you see, they cut a bunch of stuff out. You were going to find out that Tyrell was a replicant. The one that fucking, what's his name, crushed. And the real Tyrell was in cryogenic storage, kind of like Wayland was. He was awake, but he was down in a subterranean chamber. His replicant was running the program, was running the show for him, and he was down in the basement, the real Tyrell, in suspended animation, but he could talk from suspended animation, and direct the other one. And he was going to stay down there until they had a cure for his disease that he had, and he wanted immortality. They were going to make him a new body and transfer his consciousness into it. And then he'd reemerge as Tyrell. He'd be immortal like a god. That's why it's shaped like a pyramid. He's the pharaoh. The pharaoh surviving death, eternal life. That was the theme of all that, which is the dream of all oligarchs, is to live forever.
All right, you want to talk about one more movie, and then we'll wrap it up because we're at 3 hours.
Okay.
So, like I said, I wanted to talk about Fitzcarraldo because Klaus Kinski. We just love to talk about Klaus Kinski. Yeah. So Fitzcarraldo, this came out in 1982. Very, very famous shit show. Because not only was it Klaus Kinski, but it was also Werner Herzog, which, if you've seen the documentary My Best Fiend, the two of them worked together a lot because they did make some brilliant movies, but the two of them had, let's call it a contentious relationship. It's an understatement. I mean, they pretty much loathed each other, I feel like. Klaus Kinski, who we've talked about before, because we've covered Crawl Space and, Nosferatu, like his version of Nosferatu, was a noted crazy person. So, so there was that. And apparently, no one could stand to be around him. So, basically, both of them had worked together, like I said, several times. They worked famously on Aguirre, The Wrath of God. And Klaus Kinski, apparently the story goes, on that set, he actually, had a tantrum and said, "I'm not going to act anymore." And Werner Herzog held a gun to his head and made him do the next scenes, while he was pointing a gun at him, like he was going to shoot him. So, like I said, a little bit of a toxic relationship, a little bit. So they're making Fitzcarraldo, which I believe came out in 1982. Now, it wasn't just Werner Herzog that had a problem with Klaus Kinski. Apparently, everybody that ever met Klaus Kinski had a problem with Klaus Kinski because he was apparently insufferable. a lot of the indigenous people around where they were filming, they shot this in Peru. The movie is, if you've never seen it, it's actually like quite a brilliant movie, but it's about a guy whose big, like, kind of quixotic dream, I guess, is to build an opera house, but like in the middle of the jungle. So yeah, and he's playing that kind of character. So they shot it in Peru, and they're, a lot of indigenous people that lived around there were like extras or on the crew or things like that, and they didn't take too kindly to Klaus Kinski. It's basically he was just acting like crazy all the time, and he was just like constantly screaming and having tantrums and whatnot. And basically a chief from a local tribe offered to murder him.
Yeah,
like went up to Werner Herzog and said, "Hey, do you want me to kill him for you?"
Yeah.
And apparently Werner was kind of like thinking about it for a minute.
Yeah, he's like, I'll consider it. Let's think about that. He's probably wondering, if I tell this guy to kill him out here in this jurisdiction, am I guilty?
He probably did that. I mean, I would imagine it probably like crossed his mind.
Yeah.
As far as I know, because we've talked about Klaus Kinski before, because we've talked about some of his other movies, and difficult to work with doesn't even cover it.
He's crazy.
He's like crazy. Not even like a little bit cute, quirky crazy. It's like legit crazy.
He evidently was having sex with his own daughter.
That's what we heard.
Yeah.
That's what we heard.
Don't hold me to it, but that's what the allegation was.
Not Nastasha.
Not Natasha. They're not one of the other ones. Yeah.
But the other.
As far as we know.
Yeah, I don't know, but I have.
I think he's got
that.
2 of them, huh? I think he had 2 of them. And wasn't he kind of like hinting that he did?
I'm not sure. Like I said, he says like all kind of like.
He says weird shit.
Like I think he's dead now. I think.
Yeah.
But,
he was crazy.
Yeah, he was like a crazy person.
He wasn't normal.
No, like big time.
No. And I think drugs are involved too.
Maybe.
I think that motherfucker was high a lot.
Yeah, and I'm sure that didn't help.
Yeah, he was a diva and high a lot and crazy.
I can't imagine, like, El Padroni said, gotta go, but I'll catch you guys later. Thanks for posting. I'll keep following. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. We're glad to see you in the chat.
Yeah, we're looking for more patrons. Go ahead. Oh, did you do the commercials?
No, not yet.
We got to show the commercials, man.
Oh, well, I'll show, like, one before the end. So, just, what I mean.
Are they going to check out?
Well, we just got, like, one more thing to talk about.
One more
like
thing? Okay. All right.
This is what happens. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
I'm going to check the chicken in a minute.
Well, I know.
Okay.
So, yeah. So it wasn't just Klaus Kinski being a diva. Like I said, I can't imagine being that narcissistic, like being that up your own ass that you really like feel like the whole world revolves around you and like everybody just has to fucking acquiesce to your needs. I just don't understand that.
There were lots of those.
I know, but it's like that every time I meet somebody like that, I'm always, because I've met some people like that too. I'm just like, what? I don't know. I don't understand that mindset at all.
Narcissism.
I've never felt that in my entire life. So I don't really get it. But yeah, so it wasn't just that. But there's actually like a documentary about, I mean, other than My Best Fiend, which is, more specifically about Werner Herzog and Klaus Kinski, like their relationship with one another. But there's actually another documentary which is called Burden of Dreams, and it's specifically about the making of Fitzcarraldo. So in the kind of behind the scenes shots from that documentary, there are a bunch of like shots of, just there's kind of poisonous snakes everywhere. It's Peru, right? So they're like in the grass and they're falling out of trees and shit like that. So basically one of the crew members actually did get bitten on the foot by one of the snakes, and they're super, super venomous, right? And basically, I guess they were kind of out in the middle of nowhere, and apparently this crew member knew how venomous the snakes were and knew perhaps that they wouldn't be able to get to medical help in time, maybe. So apparently this person decided they were going to cut their own foot off to keep the venom from spreading any further. So this person got bit by a venomous snake on his foot, and then he cut off his own foot with a chainsaw, because why not? I guess, like, that's way better than just, I mean, I hope he used a tourniquet. I don't really know. But yeah, he did live, as far as I know. But holy shit. Can you imagine, like, it's like, oh, this venomous snake bit my foot, so I'm just going to cut my own foot off with a chainsaw? But that's what happened. That's what happened.
Chicken's looking good.
Okay.
Get some more ice.
Also, Jason Robards was in this movie. And he was actually cast originally, like, in the title role of Fitzcarraldo. And he was actually in Peru for several months filming the movie in 1979. But he got dysentery 4 months into the filming, and during that time lost 40 pounds from the disease. So basically, yeah. Now, so actually Kinski wasn't supposed to play like the main role Jason Robards was, but he got dysentery and lost 40 pounds, and so, you know, he wasn't on the movie anymore. So they actually got Kinski on there. And Herzog actually did say later on that he thought Klaus Kinski was better in the role than Jason Robards would have been, but I guess we'll never know, will we? Also, Werner Herzog apparently had hired about 1,000 extras who, like I said, were indigenous to the area, and basically treated them like crap. They put the 1,000 extras in barracks, pretty much. There wasn't enough food for everybody. Like, they didn't feed everybody. And actually, like, one of the extras died of malaria. And that went on for, like, 6 months, because it was a very, very long shoot. And like I said, it was in the middle of the fucking jungle. Also, the camp was attacked by another tribe from around there. So there's that. And basically, like, after... So this other tribe attacks the crew of this movie. And one of the guys that was working on the movie got shot with an arrow. It was like a 5-foot-long arrow, and it went like up, like through his throat, for real. Like, he lived, right? But yeah, like, you're just working on a movie and you get shot with a fucking 5-foot arrow, like right through your throat. So that happened too. So yeah, so arrow through the throat. Snake bite on the foot, and then cutting off your own foot with a chainsaw. You know what I mean. It was a whole thing. And also, there was at least one and possibly two, reportedly, plane crashes on the set. One plane crash that caused several casualties, and a bunch of people had their, like, limbs split open and shit like that, and one person was paralyzed in one of the plane crashes, so there was that also. Now, I mean, was it worth it? Probably not. Fitzcarraldo is a good movie. It's a great movie, and it looks fantastic, but holy shit, like, so many people fucking died on the shit. And the thing about it, too, is that the cinematographer who worked on the movie, he actually split his hand in half while he was on the set somehow. Like, there was an accident on the set. And he actually, like I said, they were kind of far away from anything, so they had to do surgery on his hand, like, in somebody's house or some shit. And they did the surgery without any anesthetic, because, like I said, they were just in somebody's house. So, you know, not a fun time. Not a fun time. But like I said, if you can find the documentary, which I think is called Burden of Dreams, but as far as I know, it's kind of difficult to find, maybe easier nowadays, but... It's supposedly just about the filming of Fitzcarraldo and, like, all this. 'Cause like I said, people died. People had lost limbs. It was a shit show. If anything was a shit show. So I don't know. I had, like, a couple more movies, but like I said, both of the movies that I have at the end of the notes, we've already reviewed them. So I feel like we already kind of talked about that, because I wanted to get into those three that we talked about earlier, because those are ones that we hadn't talked about prior. But since we've already been going for more than 3 hours, and you seem like you're cooking the food and everything like that, so...
Yeah, I'm planning for the future. Plan for the future, got to eat.
So...
I turned the chicken up to 350, so it'd be done... We'd actually probably be done in another 10 minutes.
Okay.
And I got to do some stuff with side dishes.
So we should probably, like, wrap it up.
You can wrap it up. If you wrap it up now, I'll it'll be good.
Okay, Mr. 88 said Burden of Dreams is a Criterion Collection release, so easy to find. Okay, so I think for a long time, like, it was kind of hard to get hold of, but I'm glad Criterion, like, got behind that. Because, like I said, Fitzcarraldo is kind of like a classic, so And it was very famously like a shit show behind the scenes. So there was that as well. Now, this is a topic that we will probably have to revisit because I did want to talk about, because I know Zach was talking about doing like Heaven's Gate and stuff like that. And that was another one that I wanted to cover. But, you know, it was hard for me to like narrow it down. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this shit that we talked about. So I guess we'll wrap it up.
Never did plug anything. Didn't run commercials or anything.
Well, you know, we'll see. That's what ends up happening. Okay.
Right.
I'll just run one at the end.
All right.
I'll just run one at the end. Okay.
Yep.
So, all right. So we are going to wrap it up. Tomorrow we are off, but we will be back Friday night to do the Sidetracks show, which will always be fun, even though this is kind of like a sidetrack show anyway. So hopefully you guys had a good time. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your super chats. And we will see you guys again on Friday night. Good night.